Chapter 571. Your Majesty, the Ministry of Justice hasn't come up with a plan for the assassination in the Yuhui nunnery. It's obviously incompetent and incompetent. An imperial censor came forward and reported. Your Majesty, the Ministry of Justice has wasted a lot of people's money and disturbed the people but got nothing in the end. The assassination of several princes and the incident in the Yuhui nunnery all prove this. Your Majesty, please punish the Ministry of Justice. Another imperial censor came forward and raised an objection after saluting the emperor who was sitting high up on the throne. Your Majesty, the incident in the Yuhui nunnery and the assassination of several princes are of great importance. It's not what you think. It's even related to the remnants of the previous dynasty. We are trying our best to investigate it and dare not relax at all. Qiu Qian, the left assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice, stood up calmly and replied to the emperor. Since it's the remnants of the previous dynasty, we should act faster. If we delay it, it will only make people doubt the ability of the Ministry of Justice and it will also affect the safety of the emperor. Since these remnants of the previous dynasty have done so much in the Yuhui nunnery, they may attack the princes again next time. Another imperial censor came out of the censorate and said as soon as he stood up. It was obvious that he wanted to support the previous two imperial censors, but the topic was stealthily changed. Chu Luqian closed his eyes slightly. Sitting in the wheelchair, he looked very handsome, but he was also very weak. His pale face and pale lips showed that he was not in good health. Originally, he didn't need to come here to attend the court session. What could he do with his poor health? It was good enough that he could take good care of himself. In the past, he never attended the court session. Prince Yu and Prince Zhou were also fine before, but the officials had asked the princes to attend the court session. Since Prince Yu and Prince Zhou were going to attend the court session, he, Prince Chen, who was very noticeable, naturally had to arrange affairs. As for whether his health was good or not, it was another matter. At least the emperor treated everyone equally. Only Prince Xian, the youngest one, could wait. Not only was Prince Xian a little younger, but he was also not a lot calmer. The emperor also said that when he was a little older, he would enter the court to observe politics. Chu Luqian had never been to the court before, because it was said that he had been ill in bed. Many people were surprised that he suddenly went to the court today. But when they saw the prince sitting in a wheelchair with his eyes closed and resting, they pretended not to see it, although it was a little improper. What was the point of messing around with a sick person who might not even have a tomorrow? Moreover, this person was favored. If he accidentally caused some trouble, no one would be able to bear the responsibility. Moreover, all the officials understood that this person was the most legitimate one. If he wanted to come to the imperial court and anyone stopped him, they would be cursed for thousands of years in history. Therefore, even those imperial censors who were very strict and paid attention to their reputation would not dare to offend Chu Luqian. Although only the crown prince and the emperor had a seat in the imperial court, this was the best he could do in his current condition. It was good enough that he could still hold on with his eyes closed. What else could they ask of Prince Chen? Your Majesty, the remnants of the former dynasty are fierce. We must get rid of all these people, lest the people in the world be plunged into misery again. Another official stepped out and said loudly. Yes, Your Majesty, I ask Your Majesty to investigate this matter again. We can't let the enemy sweep through several cities like last time. How many people lost their homes and lives because of this? Even my elder brother. Duke Xing stood out in front of the steps. His round and pleasant smiling face turned red, and his eyes also turned red. When he said this, he choked with sobs and couldn't say a word. His words aroused a lot of sympathy. At that time, many people who were killed in the war were closely related to the senior officials in the imperial court. When the people of the former dynasty caught people related to the senior officials, they all used cruel means, and few people could survive. As soon as he said this, it immediately aroused a common hatred for the enemy, and many officials stood out. Chu Luqian raised his eyes, and his long eyelashes fluttered twice. He looked expressionlessly at the angry officials in the hall, and then looked at Chu Luyue and Chu Liuzhou standing in front of the officials. Then he slowly lowered his beautiful eyes, continued to support his head with his hands, leaned against the wall, and closed his eyes to rest. Of course, this was not the focus this time. Everyone knew that the remnants of the former dynasty had to find out. But now it could not be realized immediately. The figures of the former dynasty flashed in the Yuhui nunnery, but when they continued to investigate, they found that although the black-clad men were from the former dynasty, they didn't leave any survivors, so they couldn't find anything. As for the biggest secret in the Yuhui nunnery, it was not the former dynasty, but the position of the former emperor's S. What they were going to talk about today was actually not the former dynasty, and it was what the officials of the imperial court were best at doing. He stealthily steered the matter away. In fact, he didn't come here voluntarily. He was instructed by his uncle to come out and listen to politics and exercise more. Maybe his body would get better and he would be able to hang out with normal people. The intention of the drunkard was not to drink, and so was he. It would arouse suspicion if he took the initiative to enter the imperial court with a weak body, but since he was forced to come here by his uncle, even if he did something out of line, it would not be criticized. The officials asked one after another, and the emperor, who was high above the imperial court, finally spoke. We should do our best to clean up the affairs of the former dynasty, and never let the remnants have a chance to take action. The Ministry of Justice, the capital governor, and the guards in the capital must pay attention to this matter, and there must be no carelessness. If something really happens, I will ask seriously. Yes, we will do our best. The officials under the stairs immediately expressed their loyalty. Your Majesty, I think that the former emperors also seem to be in chaos. If they don't behave themselves, there is a way to sacrifice them. Another official came out and reported, I think that although the former dynasty is involved in the affairs of the Yuhui nunnery, the former emperors in the Yuhui nunnery are also very restless. If something bad happens, the innocence of the royal family will be ruined. As soon as he said this, several imperial censors immediately nodded. Your Majesty, I agree. The reason why the former emperors live in the Yuhui nunnery should be the root of the chaos. Moreover, there is the son of the former emperor who was suddenly drawn out. I really find it hard to believe. I also find it hard to believe. It's really hard to believe. Someone secretly glanced at Chu Luqian, who closed his eyes slightly, and said in a low voice. Chu Luqian was also the son of the former emperor. Although this matter was not about him, people inexplicably wanted to look at him. In fact, the reason why they looked at Chu Luqian was that they saw the emperor's eyes turn over. The emperor was paying attention to Prince Chen. Many people came to such a conclusion in their hearts, and this matter was indeed related to Prince Chen. Your Majesty, I don't think it's appropriate. Because of Your Majesty's kindness, the former emperors did not ask to sacrifice themselves for the former emperor. In the former dynasty, there was such a matter, but the former dynasty was tyrannical and lost the people's support. Your Majesty can't do this. Another official raised an objection. Your Majesty is kind, but you can't be used by others. The Yuhui nunnery has been in such a mess. It's impossible that the former emperors have nothing to do with it. If the child is really in the Yuhui nunnery, how can it have nothing to do with them? Others don't know, but they are in the nunnery together. How can they not know that there is one more child? I think they deceived Your Majesty together. Another official turned around and walked out of the steps. But as soon as he finished speaking, he was refuted by another official. The atmosphere in the court was very hot, but the members of the royal family were very calm. Prince Yu and Prince Zhou stood at the top of the steps without saying a word. The emperor sat there and seemed to listen to the officials, but he looked at his nephew from time to time. His nephew, Prince Chen, who had been sick and weak since he was a child and was forced to come to the court today, seemed to have nothing to do with it and only needed to take good care of himself. He even closed his eyes, which made people unable to see his emotions. How could he be so at ease when it came to the former emperor's bloodline? Chu Luqian was very at ease. His steady look made people feel that he knew everything, but everyone knew that he actually knew nothing. This matter was carried out in secret before. Who would have expected that the matter of a playboy would cause such a big event? Who would have thought that the former emperor and the posthumous child of the former emperor were involved? In fact, this posthumous child was younger than Chu Luqian. It was said that she was pregnant not long after she entered the palace, but the former emperor didn't tell her about it because he was ill at that time. Later, the former emperor died of illness. For fear of causing trouble, this concubine was locked in the Yuhui nunnery with the former emperor's and secretly gave birth there. Later, this child left the Yuhui nunnery by chance. The former emperor actually had another child, which had a great impact on Prince Chen. Your Majesty, I think it is still to be discussed whether this person is the son of the former emperor. Not to mention the matter of the Yuhui nunnery, he himself is still questionable. Prime Minister Zhang, who had been listening to the quarrel, suddenly stood out, bowed to the emperor and said loudly. His words made the people who were still quarreling stop for a moment. I agree. The Prime Minister also stood out unhurriedly. There were the two Prime Ministers in the imperial court, one was the left Prime Minister, and the other was the right Prime Minister. It was rare for them to agree with each other. Immediately, all the disputes just now were suppressed, and the imperial court quieted down. Chu Luqian slightly opened his eyes, glanced at the imperial court coldly, and then closed his eyes again, seeming to be not very interested. Your Majesty, if you want to identify the truth, you can directly summon someone here in front of the officials. Prime Minister Zhang suggested. Your Majesty, I also think it is better to directly clarify. If he is not the son of the former emperor, he should be killed. The royal bloodline should not be mixed. If he is, we can also submit a memorial to prevent the former emperor's bloodline from being lost. The Prime Minister slowly expressed his agreement. Since the two Prime Ministers expressed the same opinion, a large number of officials immediately expressed their support. Chapter 572. The golden armored guard went down and soon came up with a man. After forcing him to kneel on the ground, the guard retreated. Chu Qing of the Grass Era greets Emperor Uncle. At the foot of the steps was a young man dressed in an ordinary navy blue robe. After kneeling down, he bowed 3 times and kowtowed 9 times to the emperor above the Dan Ke and said loudly. Some people knew about this. Hearing him call the emperor uncle, those who didn't know looked at Chu Luqian, who was sitting in the wheelchair, in astonishment. This was the one who called the former emperor uncle, but he was raised as the emperor's youngest son. Moreover, he was the lineal eldest son of the former emperor. Then who was the person in front of them? Just now, the emperor kept mentioning the Yuhui nunnery and vaguely mentioned the son of the former emperor. Was this person the son of the former emperor? When he raised his head, he had an outstanding and handsome face. Compared with Chu Luyue and Chu Liuzhou, he was far less outstanding than Chu Luqian. There seemed to be some similarities, but it was not very obvious. When they looked closely, they couldn't see it. Are you Chu Qing? The emperor's eyes also fell on Chu Qing's face. His eyes were cold without any ripples. Yes, I am. Chu Qing said respectfully, but his behavior was natural and unrestrained, which made people have to praise him. Tell me about your experience. The emperor said. I was born in the Yuhui nunnery since I was a child. At that time, my mother had already entered the Yuhui nunnery. She was worried that something would happen to me, so she didn't dare to tell others about what had happened to me. After that, I had been hiding in the courtyard of the Yuhui nunnery and dressed as a woman. Something happened in the Yuhui nunnery. My mother was afraid that something would happen to me, so she asked me to go down the mountain secretly. Originally, I just wanted to hide my name, but I didn't expect that I would be involved in the kidnapping of a girl. Chu Qing said with fervor and assurance. Several senior officials of the Ministry of Justice all knew about this matter. They knew that the elder brother who had killed a girl and escaped was saved by this person, and then this matter was exposed. Who is your mother? The Prime Minister asked with a cold frown. Chu Qing didn't directly say her title before. Those who knew only knew that she was an, but they didn't know who she was. The former emperor's imperial noble consort Yu. Chu Qing said loudly. His words immediately shocked all the ministers. At that time, the late emperor favored imperial noble consort Yu very much. It was said that imperial noble consort Yu was a branch of a big aristocratic family in the previous dynasty. The Yu family had a close relationship with the royal family of the previous dynasty. Fortunately, imperial noble consort Yu was only a branch of the Yu family that was about to lose contact with them. This was also the former emperors, who had the highest position in the imperial palace. It was said that when the late emperor was alive, imperial noble consort Yu was almost as powerful as the empress. She was very powerful in the harem and didn't get along well with the late empress. This should be one of the important reasons why she didn't dare to say that she was pregnant when the emperor was sick. Not long after entering the palace, she got a high position, secretly got pregnant and entered the Yuhui nunnery to give birth to a child. This imperial noble consort Yu sounded like a big shot. My mother was pregnant at that time, but my father passed away. She cried so hard that she fainted. After that, she was sent to the Yuhui nunnery and kept it a secret. If it weren't for the accident in the Yuhui nunnery this time, my mother wouldn't have sent me down the mountain in a hurry. I didn't know much about the world, so I got into trouble when I went down the mountain. That's why my secret was exposed. Chu Qing explained the cause and effect clearly. Chu Luchen, who was sitting on one side, raised his eyes, and a pair of handsome eyes fell coldly on Chu Qing. He looked calm and just rubbed his forehead with his hand, as if he had a slight headache. Hearing this, many of the officials nodded slowly and felt that this matter was credible. The imperial noble consort Yu of the previous dynasty was also a powerful figure. Moreover, she was still in the Yuhui nunnery. In fact, it was very easy to find out whether it was true or not. The emperor should also want to recognize this person. Otherwise, he would not have brought her to the court and told her his background in front of all the officials. Otherwise, he would have directly punished her in secret. Although the son of the former emperor was not the eldest legitimate son, he was also the noble son of a concubine. In this case, could it also be considered that this son of a concubine actually had the possibility to inherit the throne? The current emperor doted on Prince Chen very much, even more than his own sons. If this person in front of him was also a son of a concubine, did it mean that Prince Chen would fall out of favor? And the Empress Dowager also loved Prince Chen because of the former emperor. It seemed that this Prince Chen really had nothing to do with him. A sick and weak grandson who no one knew when he would die was always a little less pleasing than a healthy grandson. From the perspective of the former emperor, the Empress Dowager should also like the person in front of her, not the one who was half lying in the wheelchair. Some smart people in the court immediately felt that the person in front of them might be favored and have a meteoric rise. Your Majesty, since he is the eldest son of the former emperor, he should be rewarded. As expected, Prime Minister Zhang was the first to speak bluntly. Although Prime Minister Wen did not say anything, he also nodded in agreement. The bloodline of the former emperor naturally could not be left to the common people. Then all the officials also agreed. Although the emperor did not say anything, he nodded to the eunuch beside him. The eunuch took 2 steps forward, took out an imperial edict that had been prepared for a long time, and read it. All the officials knelt down to listen to the edict. The edict was very simple. It said that Chu Qing was indeed the son of the former emperor and was indeed the flesh and blood of the royal family. He had indeed been raised in the Yuhui nunnery for many years. All the S in the Yuhui nunnery could testify, so he was conferred the title of Commandery Prince Qing. As soon as the edict came out, although Chu Qing was stunned for a moment, he immediately thanked the emperor. The Ministry of Justice has to pay close attention to the matter of the Yuhui nunnery. If there are any remnants of the former dynasty, we will not let it go. As for the S of the former dynasty, we have to discuss it with the officials. I'm tired today. You can leave now. The emperor stood up and said slowly. After that, he left the hall with a group of eunuchs and palace maids. The officials also left in twos and threes. Prince Xian and Prince Zhou walked at the end. They looked at Chu Qing, who was still kneeling on the ground, with disdain and a sneer on their lips. Then they turned around and left. A commandery prince could not attract their attention. They had thought that their father would also confer him the title of prince, but now it seemed that he was just an idle commandery prince. Xiao Xuanzi waited until almost all the people left before he pushed Chu Liuchen's wheelchair to leave. "You are my second brother." At this time, Chu Qing had stood up. When he saw Chu Liuchen in the wheelchair, he hurried over with a surprised and excited face. Chu Liuchen raised his eyes and looked at him. There was a hint of coldness in his cold eyes, which was not what a sick person should have at all. It was extremely cold and aggressive. Chu Qing involuntarily took a few steps back. The words that were about to come out of his mouth were forced back by such a cold gaze, and the friendly smile on his face also stiffened. Xiao Xuanzi glanced at him coldly and slowly pushed Chu Liuchen away, ignoring him. Watching Chu Liuchen leave, Chu Qing's face darkened and his expression also became cold. He clenched his fists hard. He was just a sick person. Did he really think that he was someone important? When he won the favor of the Empress Dowager and the Emperor in the future, no one would pay attention to this sick person. But now it was not the right time. After making up his mind, Chu Qing walked out quickly, trying to catch up with Xiao Xuanzi. However, he found that Xiao Xuanzi, who had just left the hall, was called away by a eunuch. It seemed that this eunuch should be the emperor's servant. The emperor actually called a eunuch over at this time. Was it for his own matter? Chu Qing stood in the main hall, feeling a little uneasy. Chu Liuchen was indeed called away by the emperor. He did not go to the emperor's imperial study, but only received Chu Liuchen in a side hall where the emperor was. There was no one else in the side hall, except for a personal chief eunuch standing there. When Chu Liuchen's wheelchair came in, he waved his hand to signal Xiao Xuanzi to leave, and then he took the initiative to push Chu Liuchen's wheelchair. Xiao Xuanzi responded and left, standing outside the hall to wait. The chief eunuch pushed Chu Liuchen's wheelchair into the hall. This side hall was not big, even smaller than the emperor's imperial study. It was precisely because it was not big that it seemed to be a little domestic, just like the flower hall in the general mansion, which looked extremely leisurely. The emperor sat on the chair in the middle. When he saw Chu Liuchen come in, his cold face softened a little. He asked the chief eunuch to put Chu Liuchen in front of him and said with a gentle look, "You don't have to care about that person just now. He's just someone you missed out. I and your imperial grandmother still care about you the most. They will never let Chu Qing affect you. Uncle, don't worry. I'm fine. I just don't like one more person suddenly appearing and hiding in a place like the Yuhui nunnery." Chu Liuchen said gently. Although it could be seen that his smile did not reach his eyes, he was very reluctant. But it was also known that he was still trying to show that he didn't care. The emperor sighed softly, stood up, and gently patted him on the shoulder. "In the hearts of your imperial grandmother and uncle, you are the only son of my brother. What others do has nothing to do with you. You don't have to care about him. If you want to talk to him, just do. If you don't want to talk to him, just ignore him." These words were spoken in a very intimate manner, completely like a senior. Moreover, it was the appearance of an elder who doted on the younger generation. Even his usual voice had softened a little. "Thank you, uncle." Chu Liuchen stood up with the help of the wheelchair and bowed deeply to the emperor. Although his face was calm, he could not hide the excitement at the bottom of his eyes. It seemed that he was touched, which made the emperor very satisfied. "Well, sit down and have a good rest. Don't get up. Although you are a little better, you can't stand such torment. If you can recover in the future, come to the imperial court. Since you are helping me, you can't be lazy." The emperor smiled and personally pulled Chu Liuchen up to let him sit down. "I'll listen to your arrangement," Chu Liuchen said gently. He looked as gentle and elegant as jade. Although he was sick and weak, there was a natural elegance in him. The emperor felt more and more pity for him. He waved his hand, and the chief eunuch pushed Chu Liuchen's wheelchair out. Xiao Xuanzi took it over at the door of the hall, and then pushed Chu Liuchen away. When the chief eunuch Durong returned to the hall, he saw that the emperor was still looking at the back of Prince Chen, leaving with a gloomy look. He hurriedly lowered his head and stood aside. "Do you think he will hate me?" The emperor's voice was very soft, as if he was talking to himself, but Durong knew that he was talking to him. Chapter 573. You just recognized a nephew, the posthumous son of the late emperor? Xiao Wanru asked lightly and was not too surprised. She had been wondering when the posthumous son would be exposed, but now it happened very fast, which was different from the last life. At this time, she happened to be standing on a cliff at the back, and she could faintly see the courtyard behind the high wall. Occasionally, some women appeared in her sight. They were all dressed in black, but they all kept their hair. They should be the S of the late emperor. Omega for all, 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 omega. The side door of the high wall was opened. There were a lot of people here today, including officials of the Ministry of Justice and some eunuchs in the imperial palace. There was also a young man dressed in gorgeous clothes. It seemed that he was the one who came here. In the last life, the matter of the Yuhui nunnery broke out later than now. Later, she had seen the newly recognized commandery Prince Qing from a distance in the imperial palace. They had the same name, but in the last life, it seemed that he was not involved in the case of a playboy robbing a woman. Instead, he accidentally bumped into an official's carriage and was discovered. It seemed to have something to do with Great Elder Princess. Xiao Wanru was not clear about this. She only heard from the beauties in the talent show in the last life that the talent show also intended to choose a princess for commandery Prince Qing at that time, so there was a rumor about commandery Prince Qing. It was said that although commandery Prince Qing was the posthumous son of an of the previous dynasty, he did not seem to be recognized by the emperor. He was recognized only because there were too many rumors outside, and it seemed that he really had royal blood. However, commandery Prince Qing was not favored after being recognized. It was said that he accidentally appeared in someone else's case or bumped into someone else's carriage. In fact, it just showed that commandery Prince Qing was very scheming. Xiao Wanru was now sure that commandery Prince Qing should have something to do with Mo Chui, and he might even be Mo Chui's poor, fellow countryman. If her grandmother hadn't refused before, would she have sent him down the mountain out of sympathy? Then when commandery Prince Qing appeared in front of the emperor, her grandmother would be involved. Commandery Prince Qing was not favored by the emperor and the empress dowager. If her grandmother came in rashly, she would definitely get into trouble. If the emperor and the empress dowager didn't like them, a great elder princess who didn't have any real power and only had the title but no real power, if the emperor and the empress dowager didn't like her, she would definitely have a hard time. A trace of coldness flashed across her watery eyes. Commandery Prince Qing and Mo Chui obviously wanted to use her maternal grandmother as a stepping stone. That night, he saw someone go to Mo Chui's room through the high wall. It should be this commandery Prince Qing. Thinking of Mo Chui's departure, he sneered. As expected, this commandery Prince Qing, who grew up in the Yuhui nunnery, was not an ordinary person. However, he might have miscalculated one thing. Chu Liuchen thought that commandery Prince Qing, who had a similar background and a healthier body, would be less favored by the emperor and the empress dowager. But in fact, in the last life, commandery Prince Qing was not favored at all, and it did not affect Chu Liuchen at all. She had sent the painting to the right person. Chu Liuchen had taken her to see commandery Prince Qing sneakily before, so he must have known about this person for a long time. Yes, he was born in the Yuhui nunnery. I heard that he came here today to find his mother, and it seems that he wants to take his mother away from here. I heard that his mother is the former imperial noble consort Yu. The emperor now conferred her the title of Old Princess Yu and allowed her to live in commandery Prince Qing's mansion with her son, Yu Jie said. So many people came to the gate of the Yuhui nunnery with great fanfare today, and the whole Yuhui nunnery knew it. Yujie inquired about the cause of the matter. It had been a while since they entered the nunnery, and now they saw many people coming out. Then a man in luxurious clothes came out with a girl in his arms. Yujie could not see her clearly because she lowered her head, but she could vaguely see her old posture and appearance. She looked a little too old, and she should not be very old. The former emperor's imperial noble consort Yu seems to be very old. Yujie also saw the scene below and said in surprise. She had good eyesight. Not only did she see that the imperial noble consort Yu, who was being supported, seemed to have difficulty walking, but her hair was not as black as that of the girl beside her, and she seemed to be a little gray. It should be 30J. Xiao Wanru calculated and said. It's not 30J, it's 40J. Xiao Yenru's overly soft voice suddenly came into her ears. She turned around and saw Xiao Yenru standing on the path up the mountain. It seemed that she also came here to watch the fun. Big sister. Xiao Wanru said lightly. Fifth sister, are you also here to see the newly recognized commandery Prince Qing? Xiao Yenru said with a slight smile. She came over and stood beside Xiao Wanru. She also looked down and said with a smile, it is said that this imperial noble consort Yu was not young when she entered the imperial palace. Because of the war, her marriage was delayed, but she was extremely beautiful. The former emperor liked her at first sight, so he took her into the imperial palace. However, she was unlucky. Not long after she entered the imperial palace, the former emperor died. Isn't it said that the former emperor was very favored when he was alive? Was he on par with the former empress? Xiao Wanru said in surprise. She really didn't know about it. Yes, she has been favored since she entered the imperial palace, but it has only been less than 2 months. Xiao Yenru said with a smile. Xiao Wanru frowned slightly, and there was a trace of deepness in her watery eyes. So it was different from what she thought. This imperial noble consort Yu, who was said to be very favored, had actually been favored for 1 or 2 months. She, who was unlucky, was sent to the Yuhui nunnery soon after she entered the imperial palace. It sounded really pitiful. Xiao Wanru looked at the crowd gradually going out and asked curiously, Commandery Prince Qing used to live here. Big sister, have you found it? If it were so easy to find it, it wouldn't have happened now. Fifth sister, you have lived on this mountain for a period of time. Do you know anything? Xiao Yenru said with a faint smile. No. Xiao Wanru said with certainty. The two of them suddenly laughed and then turned their heads together. Xiao Yenru reached out to point down and sighed, it's really surprising that the posthumous son of the former emperor is so healthy. It's a pity for Prince Chen. Her words were extremely meaningful, and it seemed that she had not finished her words, which could lead to a topic. However, Xiao Wanru didn't seem to notice her words. Looking at the crowd that had gone far away and the high wall that had been closed again, she turned her feet and said, Big sister, there's nothing to see here. Do you want to go back together? You go back first. I'll have a look. Xiao Yenru shook her head and said with a smile. Then I'll go first. Xiao Wanru walked towards the path that wound around the mountain. Fifth sister, take care. Xiao Yenru looked at her with a smile and politely. The two of them passed by each other. One went down, while the other continued to go up the mountain. Xiao Wanru looked back halfway and found that the first miss was in high spirits today. She was still climbing up. In the past, the two of them would occasionally stand here and enjoy the scenery, but neither of them would go up again. On the one hand, it was because the scenery was not much more beautiful than here if they went up. On the other hand, the upper section was much steeper than the lower section. Miss, what is the first miss doing? Yujie didn't understand. In the past, the first miss was always delicate and gentle, as if she would be tired by walking. Today, she was really special. Ignore it. Let's go down the mountain. Xiao Wanru smiled slightly and said nothing. There were really a lot of secrets in the Yuhui nunnery. It was appalling to raise a son of the late emperor as a girl here. It was really not a big deal to have a sex party in the backyard. She didn't want to be killed in such a place because of what she saw. She didn't forget that Xiao Yenru's words just now were obviously pointing at something and making her suspicious. Now Xiao Yenru climbed up the mountain in front of her, which was not in line with her usual behavior. No matter how she looked at it, it was full of mystery and hidden seduction. She cherished her life very much and wouldn't lose her life because of excessive curiosity. Do you want Qing to guard the place to go down the mountain? Yujie felt that there was something wrong and said worriedly. No. Xiao Wanru shook her head decisively and refused. Even if someone can come here, Qing can't guard it alone and may even expose Qing What we have to do now is to go back and wait quietly and do nothing. After returning to the courtyard, Xiao Wanru went back to the silence room and burned incense to copy scriptures in the silence room for a whole day. In the middle of the day, she heard voices in the courtyard and even heard Xiao Yenru's voice asking questions, but Yujie refused. Everyone in the courtyard knew that once Xiao Wanru was chanting and copying scriptures, she couldn't be interrupted. Xiao Wanru kept copying until it was time for dinner. She put down the writing brush in her hand and looked at the scriptures in front of her. She touched her sore hands, walked to the door and asked Yujie to fetch water to wash her hands. Yujie had been waiting outside the door for a long time. Hearing Xiao Wanru's order, she hurriedly brought in the warm water and helped Xiao Wanru clean her hands. Chu Lu carried the food box from the kitchen, took out a plate of simple dishes, and then took out a basket of steamed rice with lotus leaf powder. She said with a smile, "Miss, there are steamed rice with lotus leaf powder in the kitchen today. I've brought it for you. I heard that it's the food given by Commandery Prince Qing today." In order to thank the Yuhui nunnery for the rice, Commandery Prince Qing will perform religious rites in the Yuhui nunnery later. The steamed rice with lotus leaf powder was very fragrant. As soon as it was taken out, there was a strong smell of lotus leaves. It was just autumn, and the lotus leaves in many places were still very good. After being steamed, the taste was very good. Before eating, she felt that it was very appetizing. Commandery Prince Qing is really making a big fuss, Xiao Wanru said with a smile. After washing her hands, she sat down, picked up a small bowl of steamed rice with lotus leaf in the bowl that Chula filled for her, smelled it, and found that it was really good. She put it in her mouth and tasted it. It was also good. "Miss, I went to get it with Shuqi. But when I left, Shuqi was still there." She was asking the cook in Commandery Prince Qing's mansion how to make the lotus leaf rice. It seemed that first Miss liked it very much. "It's like lotus leaf rice," Chula said as she took away the remaining lotus leaf rice. "This kind of sticky thing should not be eaten too much. A small bowl was enough, or it would cause indigestion." The cook of Commandery Prince Qing's mansion is still in the Yuhui nunnery. Xiao Wanru put down her chopsticks. Chapter 574. The Favor of a Meal. First, he took his biological mother away in a big way. Before the personnel of the Ministry of Justice left, he could inquire about it at the gate of the Yuhui nunnery. It could be seen that everyone knew it clearly. The royal family had always been cautious. Since he could inquire about it so casually, it could be seen that he did not harm anyone at all and even did not care whether others knew it or not. 1 second to remember, there was no pop-up window for free reading. As for the favor of a meal, it lasted for half a year. In the future, no matter which family came to the Yuhui nunnery, they would know Commandery Prince Qing's gratitude. Finally, there was a follow-up religious rite. Commandery Prince Qing naturally did not have the right to hold the religious rite for the late emperor. Therefore, this religious rite was definitely not the late emperor's. It was most likely to be a relative of imperial noble consort Yu or her parents. He did this out of filial piety. No matter from which aspect, this was not only a good deed, but also an act of kindness and filial piety. One move after another, Commandery Prince Qing was really not an ordinary person. It seemed that he was unusual. This kind of thing originally had nothing to do with Xiao Wanru. She was just a weak girl in the backyard and couldn't care about this kind of thing. However, because it might be related to Chu Luchen, she inevitably paid more attention to it and asked Qing to go down the mountain to tell Chu Luchen what she had seen and heard today. It was not that she doubted Chu Luchen's means. It would not be difficult for him to find out these things if he wanted to. However, now the personnel of the Ministry of Justice slowly retreated, and it was inconvenient for him to go up the mountain, so it would be more convenient for him to investigate. Xiao Wanru would not forget that when she was about to come to the Yuhui nunnery, Chu Luchen had entrusted her with some things, but she had not done these things until now. Speaking of it, she felt guilty. Now that she had a chance to know something, she would naturally report it to Chu Luchen immediately. The S of the late emperor behind the high wall could not make any trouble now. The personnel of the Ministry of Justice had investigated again and again. Even if there were any tricks, they had found out clearly now. Qing left quickly and came back quickly. She only brought back a sentence from Chu Luchen. Prince said he got it. From now on, you don't have to worry about the affairs of the former emperor's S anymore. These words made Xiao Wanru breathe a sigh of relief. The guards on the other side of the high wall became more and more strict. If she showed a trace of interest, it would inevitably arouse people's suspicion. Occasionally when she passed by the side door and saw the nuns who followed her closely, she knew that the guards here were not as relaxed as before. It was the right thing to walk over without looking sideways. Qing brought another piece of news from the foot of the mountain, which made Xiao Wanru feel both expected and surprised. What had happened to Xiushui of Baiyun Taoist Temple was now related to Qi Rongji. It was said that the first Miss Qi knelt down and apologized to old madam with tears in front of an official who came to Duke Xing's mansion to inquire about this matter. She said that she also believed in the words of the young madam of Duke Yang's mansion by mistake, thought this Taoist priest was good, and then recommended him to old madam. If she hadn't said so, when the nuns in the Yuhui nunnery recommended this Taoist priest, old madam would not have agreed without hesitation. It was said that old madam was also very kind. She pulled Qi Rongji up and told her that it was her first time in the capital city and it was normal for her to be fooled by others. She also told her not to listen to others' nonsense in the future, let alone pass others' nonsense to the elders in the mansion, so as to make so many troubles. Madam of Duke Xing also repeatedly asked the official of the Ministry of Justice to forgive her for listening to hearsay, and also prepared a generous gift. With the departure of the official of the Ministry of Justice, this matter was spread out. Everyone said that this Miss Qi from Jiangzhou was extremely unpresentable. She didn't have the appearance of a miss from an aristocratic family at all. She turned out to be a talkative person. Not only was she talkative, but she also violated the morality, appearance, and speech of a woman. Like a talkative servant, she actually spread nonsense and made such a big trouble. She felt ashamed to face Madam of Duke Xing, who had taken her as her adopted daughter, and even more ashamed to face Madam of Duke Xing's careful education in the past 2 years. Their words were extremely unpleasant. They all implied that Qi Rongji was not good in nature and was not a well-educated woman. Even though Madam of Duke Xing had tried her best to teach her, she was still a mischievous woman. Aristocratic families paid great attention to the appearance of women. If Qi Rongji had such a reputation, it would be difficult for her to get married. Miss Duke Qi's mansion has put all the blame on the first Miss Qi and first Miss Qin. They are really cunning. After hearing Qing's words, Yujia curled her lips and said sarcastically. She had fought with Qi Rongji and Qin Yuru, so she didn't have a good impression of them. Even though they seemed to be wronged now, Yujia felt that she would not sympathize with them. After all, they had asked for it. At that time, in order to get close to Madam of Duke Xing, the first Miss Qi had schemed against her Miss a lot. After that, she had also acted high and mighty. As for the first Miss Qin, she and Madam D had been trying to harm Miss in every way. If it were not for Miss's intelligence, she might have been killed by their schemes. Madam of Duke Xing, I am afraid that you have underestimated Duke Yang's mansion. Xiao Wanru smiled slightly, and the smile on her lips was very shallow. Although Duke Yong's mansion was not as powerful as Duke Xing's mansion, and it seemed to be attached to Duke Xing's mansion in the last life, it was an aristocratic family after all. Moreover, considering what had happened to Heng Rui before, she felt that Duke Yong's mansion was not as simple as it seemed. In the last life, the matter of Baiyun Taoist Temple did not cause any harm to Duke Yong's mansion. If Duke Xing's mansion wanted to push all the blame to Duke Yong's mansion, it would be counterproductive. But she didn't know which master was behind the two mansions. If they were the same master, it would be a coincidence. As expected, after a few days, there was news from outside that the young madam of Duke Yong's mansion had been wronged. She was so angry that she surrendered. Fortunately, the servant girl was clever and saved her. The people of Duke Yong's mansion were also angry. In front of the officials of the Ministry of Justice who were investigating the matter, they wanted to confront Qi Rongji and ask when and where their young madam met her and said that. As for the matter of Xiushui of Baiyun Taoist Temple, Duke Yong's mansion also openly admitted in front of everyone that they were actually deceived by this Taoist priest. As for recommending Xiushui to other families later, they just said it according to their own intentions. As for whether other families invited Xiushui or not, it had nothing to do with them. And the reason why they believed it was that the previous Duke Yong was deceived. Now that the old Duke Yong had passed away, they couldn't make a dead person to ruin his reputation. Since this matter was spread after being deceived by the old Duke Yong, and later because the current old madam of Duke Yong didn't believe it, she didn't invite Xiushui Taoist priest often, even less than some aristocratic families. Now that Xiushui Taoist priest was in trouble, it had nothing to do with their mansion. The officials of the Ministry of Justice investigated it and found that Xiushui Taoist priest rarely went to Duke Yong's mansion. Except for the first time because of the old Duke Yong, he almost never went there. After Qin Yuru got married, she didn't go there even once. Because Qin Yuru got married, it could be said that she got married with a bad reputation. After she got married, she almost never saw anyone, let alone meet Qi Rongji and lure Qi Rongji to talk about Xiushui Taoist priest. Duke Yong's mansion took a strong attitude and asked Qi Rongji to confront Qin Yuru face to face, but Duke Xing's mansion was unwilling to do so. They said that as an unmarried miss, no matter whether she was the daughter of Duke Xing's mansion or not, she should be raised in Duke Xing's mansion. They couldn't let her reputation be ruined, so they just said that this matter was over and they didn't want to pursue it anymore. They could just pretend that Qi Rongji heard it wrong. Now it was hard to explain. One said that it was the young madam of Duke Yong's mansion who said it, but Qin Yuru hung herself, which made people feel that she was really wronged. But if she didn't say it, how could Qi Rongji know it? How long had she been in the capital city? She had never met this evil Taoist priest Xiushui. Could he be a member of Duke Xing's mansion? Thinking of this, the topic came back. Anyway, this matter was a mess now. Duke Yong's mansion and Duke Xing's mansion both suspected it, and each of them said it with certainty. The Ministry of Justice sent people to both mansions, but they couldn't find out the truth. They originally wanted to take this first Miss Qi back, but this first Miss Qi also committed suicide. After the people of Duke Xing's mansion saved her, they didn't allow the people of the Ministry of Justice to question this first Miss Qi anymore. Otherwise, it would be bad for Duke Yong's mansion. After hearing that Madam of Duke Xing specially went to Duke Yong's mansion stopped asking the Ministry of Justice to take her back. The rumors outside were still unpleasant, but this time they mainly revolved around Madam of Duke Xing and old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion. They all thought that if someone made this first Miss Qi lie, it must be one of them. But now Duke Yong's mansion didn't pursue this matter, so people could only treat it as a mess. This first Miss Qi was associated with the shameless first Miss Qin, so it could be seen that they also had a bad moral standing. After getting the news, Xiao Wanru was in a good mood and specially ate half a bowl of rice. In the last life, Duke Xing's mansion and Duke Yong's mansion were closely associated with each other, and they were the two mountains that suppressed her. Now such a thing happened. Even if she didn't know what kind of relationship they had, she would definitely have a grudge against them, and they couldn't be as close as in the last life. As for the fallout between Qi Rongji and Qin Yuru, she was also happy to see it. With these things, it would be very difficult for Qi Rongji to find a good marriage. At that time, Qi Rongji took a fancy to Duke Xing's mansion and tried every means to get close to Madame of Duke Xing. Didn't she want a good marriage? Now, even with Duke Xing's mansion behind her, it was difficult for aristocratic families to take a fancy to her. The reason why Qin Yuru, who also had a bad reputation, got married was that it was her maternal grandfather's family. Now, with Qi Rongji's heart, she was afraid that the whole Duke Xing's mansion would hate her. This was good. The biggest difference between Qi Rongji and Qin Yuru was that Qi Rongji was not only vicious herself, but also had an equally vicious and unscrupulous brother. With such a move, she didn't know how Qi Tianyu could cooperate with Xiao Yanru perfectly. Previously, if there had been an agreement between them, how could Qi Tianyu protect Xiao Yanru to leave under such circumstances? Qi Tianyu was a poisonous scorpion, while Xiao Yanru was a beautiful snake. Chapter 575. How dare you ask me to explain it? How dare you? Xiao Yanru threw the letter in her hand fiercely and said angrily. First miss, how dare you ask me to explain it? Do you have the face to do so? Shuqi carefully picked up the letter on the ground and said angrily. The letter was sent to the mountain in the name of Miss Qi, but in fact, it was sent by Miss Qi's brother. As the first Mrs. henchman, Shuqi certainly knew the real source of the letter. Tell him to behave himself. If he is unwilling to work for me, forget it. Xiao Yanru said with a sneer and sat down heavily in the chair. The more she thought about it, the angrier she became. Who was she? Who was Qi Rongji? How could she compare with her? How dare she ask her to explain for Qi Rongji? She didn't know who she was and did not have the face to do so. Miss, just say that. Shuqi looked at the blank paper on the desk and said uneasily. Yes, just say that to the servant girl who sent the letter, Xiao Yanru said angrily. First miss, this is not a good idea. If the servant girl finds out something, it will be bad if it is spread out. Miss, you have such a noble reputation. How can you be involved in this kind of trouble? Shuqi advised. Xiao Yanru looked a little better. She stood up, walked to the desk, picked up the writing brush, and wrote it down. After writing it, she looked at it carefully and said coldly, Tell the servant girl that I will think about it. If possible, I hope I won't hurt her. In fact, the servant girl was not Qi Rongji's servant, but Qi Tianyu's. Yes, First Mississippi. I understand. I will hint you not to hurt the first Miss Qi and protect her if possible. But now you are on the mountain and are stopped by the 5th Mississippi. Even if you want to, you can't do it. So you can only ask Madam to deal with it. Shuqi said cleverly. Since the servant girl came in the name of Miss Qi, she regarded the servant girl as Miss Qi. In fact, the Miss Qi in the mansion was useless in front of her master. She didn't dare to do anything when her master asked her to do it, let alone write a letter to ask for help. Seeing that her servant girl liked her very much, Xiao Yanru nodded and looked calm. She had not ascended to that position yet, and Qi Tianyu was a very good helper. At this time, she did not want to offend Qi Tianyu. Xiao Yanru was also very angry that her grandma chose Qi Rongji as a scapegoat. She thought that her grandma was really muddle-headed. There were so many children in the 3rd branch and she could choose any one of them. When she ascended to a high position in the future, the whole Duke Xing's mansion would be extremely noble. Why would she care about the children of the 3rd branch? Moreover, if the children of Xing country's mansion came forward, they would be more credible than Qi Rongji. But now, they failed to get Duke Yong's mansion and made a mess. Both her mother and grandmother were too old and didn't know how to be decisive. Shuqi walked to the desk. Seeing that the paper was dry, she folded it, took out a blank envelope, and put it in. Then she hesitated for a moment and said, Miss, should we let young Master Qi's 2 old maids go back? Don't let them go back. Since Qi Tianyu didn't say anything, don't let them go back for the time being. Anyway, they are just 2 ordinary old maids who came to offer incense. Xiao Yanru shook her head. The two old maids were not used before, but it didn't mean that they would not be used in the future. Xiao Wanru was always a source of trouble. It would be best to deal with her on the mountain. Yes, I'll arrange it later, Shuqi said with a frown. The two old maids had come to her before and said that they would go down the mountain if there was nothing else. She didn't know whether it was because they got the news about young Master Qi or they really couldn't stay here any longer. It would be great if the fifth miss could be deceived to climb up the mountain path last time. The two old maids were hiding on the mountain path, waiting for the fifth miss to come up, so that they could find a place to rush down and knock the fifth miss down the mountain. As for the servant girl following them, so many people couldn't deal with an ordinary servant girl, right? However, she didn't expect that the first miss didn't lead the fifth miss up the mountain, which wasted the first miss's time. Now the matter about the first Miss Qi had happened. Shuqi was afraid that there would be a rift between young Master Qi and her master. After seeing the servant girl sent by Qi Tianyu, she deliberately said a lot of caring words to her master, indicating that her master wanted to help Miss Qi very much. However, the matter had been exposed, so it was useless to deny it. However, the first miss would immediately write a letter back and ask Madam to take care of the first Miss Qi. The reason why she couldn't leave here was the fifth Mississippi. The fifth miss not only copied the scriptures for her parents, but also forced the first miss to do so. If the first miss refused to do so, she would say that the first miss was not filial. She implicitly told the servant girl these words, and the servant girl who delivered the letter nodded repeatedly. She felt that the fifth Miss Xiao was really not a good person, but she also felt that the first Miss Xiao was really good to her master. After going back, she must tell the first young master how good the first miss was. After asking the servant girl sent by Qi Tianyu to leave, Shuqi went to find the two old maids sent by Qi Tianyu. She specially gave them 2 purses and said that she would stay for a while longer. If she couldn't do anything about it, she could let it go. She said that her master was almost bullied to death by the vicious fifth Mississippi. As a personal servant girl, she couldn't stand it anymore and asked them for help. She said that her master was almost bullied to death by the vicious fifth Mississippi. After taking the purses, the 2 old maids pinched them and felt that they were very rich. They immediately smiled and said that the first young master meant that they could stay on the mountain for at most half a month. If they stayed longer, they were afraid that the first young master would say something. Shuqi expressed her gratitude profusely, and then hurried back to report to Xiao Yanru. Xiao Yanru was very satisfied with this. Everything was done very carefully. Even if there was a small mistake, it would not affect her. No matter in front of others or behind others, she was the unparalleled, dignified, and beautiful first miss of Duke Xing's mansion. Hearing that Xiao Wanru stopped chanting scriptures and seeing the 2 servant girls go in and out, she knew that Xiao Wanru was not cultivating at this time. So she packed up a few copies of Buddhist scriptures with Shuqi and came to the silence room. She had plenty of ways to deal with Xiao Wanru, so she was not afraid that Xiao Wanru would fall into her trap. In addition to some things that everyone knew, she also knew some other things when Commandery Prince Qing came up the mountain, such as how many days he would stay on the mountain. At the door of the room, Chula happened to come out. Seeing Xiao Yanru, she bowed sideways to her. "Is your master resting?" Xiao Yanru stood at the door and asked with a smile. When she looked up, she saw Xiao Wanru sitting on the mat and reading a Buddhist scripture. Hearing her voice, Xiao Wanru raised her head with a leisurely smile, as if she was not surprised by her coming. "Big sister, have you finished copying the Buddhist scriptures?" Xiao Wanru asked. Xiao Yanru walked over, sat down on the mat, gently pinched her right hand, and said with a smile, "Take a break. After copying for so many days, my hands are very easy to get sore. I don't know if it's because I wrote fewer characters in the past." Shuqi put a few copies of Buddhist scriptures copied by Xiao Yanru on the table between them and said with a smile, "Fifth Miss, these are copied by my master in the past few days. First Miss's hands are so sore that she can't eat." "Thank you, big sister." Xiao Wanru stood up and bowed to her respectfully with a serious face. "We're sisters, so don't be so polite." Xiao Yanru said with a soft smile, reached out and asked her to sit down. "Can I see the Buddhist scriptures copied by you, fifth sister?" Xiao Wanru nodded. Yujie took out a few volumes of scriptures from behind the screen. At the sight of them, Xiao Yanru knew that Xiao Wanru didn't lie. Xiao Yanru had been copying scriptures and chanting scriptures here. Xiao Yanru couldn't help frowning. Xiao Yanru looked at the scriptures that Xiao Wanru had been reading just now and found that the scriptures had been closed. She glanced at something strange out of the corner of her eyes and couldn't help taking another look at it. At this glance, she found something strange. The cover of the scriptures seemed to be too big, which seemed to be different from the inside. "Fifth sister, what scriptures are you reading? Can I have a look?" Xiao Yanru didn't look at the scriptures in her hand, but reached for the book beside Xiao Wanru's hand and said with a leisurely smile, as if she really just wanted to have a look. Xiao Wanru moved her hand, and the book fell into her hand. Then she turned her head and handed it to Yujie, saying, "Big sister, I'm very modest. I'm still reading this scripture and need to make a copy. Can I give it to you after I finish copying it?" "Of course. Fifth sister, give it to me after you finish copying it. Since you read it so carefully, it should be good. I'll also make a copy." Xiao Yanru said indifferently and withdrew her hand, as if she had just asked casually just now. However, she sneered in her heart. She was sure that Xiao Wanru was reading some scripts. It was really improper for Xiao Wanru to read some scripts instead of observing mourning for her parents on the mountain. It would also make others feel that her so-called filial piety was superficial and very hypocritical. She had to ask someone to keep an eye on these servant girls to find new scripts at the foot of the mountain. It would be better to catch them on the spot. Needless to say, there must be many scripts hidden in this room. Of course. Xiao Wanru nodded with a smile. "Fifth sister, how is your hand? Did you use the ointment before?" Xiao Yanru said as she stretched out her hand, which was smooth as if it had never been scalded. It could be seen that the ointment was really effective. Xiao Wanru's hand was still tied with a handkerchief. She subconsciously reached out to touch it and frowned, saying, "My injury hasn't healed yet." How could it be? Could it be that the ointment in the palace mainly treats burns? Xiao Yanru also looked surprised. She reached out to untie the handkerchief on Xiao Wanru's hand to see the wound. However, her hand was blocked by Xiao Wanru's other hand. Xiao Wanru smiled a little reluctantly and said, "It should be healed soon. Big sister, don't worry. It's not a big deal. It's just that it hasn't healed yet. It's much slower than the burn on your hand. Since it's getting better, don't worry. Just use it slowly. Maybe it's not as effective as the one for burns." Xiao Yanru comforted her softly. "Maybe." Xiao Wanru looked a little hesitant and seemed to doubt the effect of the ointment. But when she saw the back of Xiao Yanru's white and tender hand, her doubt was not so strong. After chatting for a while, Xiao Yanru asked to leave. When she walked to the door, she suddenly looked back as if she had just thought of something and said, "Fifth sister, there is a maple forest in the Yuhui nunnery. It's the best time to see it now. Shall we go to see it tomorrow?" Chapter 576. Maple Forest. Xiao Wanru blinked her long eyelashes and didn't think of it for a moment. In fact, it's not called Maple Forest. It's just a place where maple trees are planted. In autumn, the red leaves are like fire, which is extremely beautiful. It's not open to the public, so people outside don't know about it. Even fifth sister, who has lived on the mountain for a period of time, doesn't know about it. Xiao Yanru introduced with a smile. Then why is it open to the public now? Xiao Wanru was really not very clear about the affairs of the Yuhui nunnery. On the one hand, she went up the mountain to avoid Duke Xing's mansion, and on the other hand, she sincerely observed mourning for her parents. As for the affairs outside, if she had nothing to do with it, she rarely asked about it. In fact, this maple forest is also close to the high wall. It's between the back mountain and the high wall. Originally, because it's close to the high wall and the back mountain, the Yuhui nunnery didn't set up guards there, so it was also blocked. Now there are guards in that area, so the maple forest is isolated. Xiao Yanru said with a soft smile, I saw it from a distance when I was on the mountain and thought it was very good. I also inquired about it from the masters of the Yuhui nunnery and thought it was good. So I want to go and have a look with you. It may be more beautiful when it's closer. Okay, let's go and have a look together tomorrow. Xiao Wanru nodded and agreed, looking a little curious. Xiao Yanru left with Shuqi with a smile. After walking out of the door, she told Shuqi, go and prepare a set of black clothes for me. Miss, your clothes are very plain. Shuqi looked at Xiao Wanru's light blue dress and said in confusion. Xiao Yanru ignored her and just hooked her hand at her. Looking around in the corridor to make sure there was no one around, she lowered her voice and said, tomorrow, send 2 old maids there. Xiao Yanru, who was looking forward to going to the maple forest, came over after breakfast early the next morning. Big sister, you. Xiao Wanru was still eating. She put down the bowl in her hand and looked Xiao Yanru up and down in astonishment. In the past, although Xiao Yanru also lived in the nunnery and wore plain clothes, she had never worn the same black clothes as Xiao Wanru. But today, she dressed almost exactly the same as Xiao Wanru. There was a simple bamboo hairpin on her head and she was dressed in a simple black robe. Although she was slightly taller than Xiao Wanru, no one could tell the difference if they didn't stand close to each other at this distance. Fifth sister has been wearing black clothes to observe mourning for eldest uncle and eldest aunt. Today, I will also wear the same clothes as fifth sister to show my sincerity. Xiao Yanru pulled her black robe and said with a smile, Fifth sister, can we go now? Her words were really interesting. At this moment, even if Xiao Wanru wanted to change her clothes, she couldn't. After all, this was her sincerity for her parents, which was filial piety. How could this filial piety be changed? It seemed that Xiao Yanru's intention to deal with her today had something to do with this dress. Thinking of the news that Qing had inquired about yesterday, a trace of gloominess flashed across her eyes, but she didn't show it on her face. She said lightly, Big sister, please wait for a moment. I'll leave after I finish tying up my hair. I'll wait for you, fifth sister. Xiao Yanru agreed with a good temper, sat down on the mat, and watched Yujie tie up Xiao Wanru's hair. This was a small silence room. It was used for meditation, so everything was simple. There was no dressing table for Xiao Wanru. Yujie just took out a box from inside, in which there were dressing items and a few small and simple pieces of jewelry. There were a few hairpins in the box, all of which looked simple. There was a bamboo hairpin similar to the one on Xiao Yanru's head, which she usually used in the past, but there were also a few jade hairpins. Yujie put them in front of her, and Xiao Wanru casually picked up a jade hairpin and handed it to Yujie. Knowing that she meant to use this hairpin, Yujie nodded, put down the box, took out a comb from inside, and carefully combed Xiao Wanru's long hair. Fifth sister, why don't you use the bamboo hairpin that you usually use? I originally wanted to use a hairpin similar to yours. Xiao Yanru picked up the tea served by Chu Lu and asked with interest. She glanced at the jade hairpin and found that it was really an extremely ordinary one. She had prepared a few such ordinary hairpins when she went up the mountain. Of course, she couldn't wear jewelry that was too beautiful and gorgeous in the nunnery. This kind of hairpin, which looked a little different but had a simple style, was very necessary. Then use the same bamboo hairpin as big sisters. Xiao Wanru casually smiled at Xiao Yanru and ordered Yujie. Fifth miss, I have reported to you yesterday that there is a gap on the side of this bamboo hairpin. You can't wear it until I make the gap round. Otherwise, it will hurt you. Yujie said with a smile. Oh, right, I forgot. Then I don't need this bamboo hairpin. Xiao Wanru said with a look of sudden realization. She reached out and patted her white and tender forehead gently. Since it's broken, of course you can't wear it again. If this kind of bamboo hairpin can't be melted, it will hurt your head and hurt your hair. Xiao Yanru also looked concerned and advised. After that, she took out a book from under the table and casually flipped through a few pages. It was a scripture, but Xiao Yanru could be sure that it was not the one she saw yesterday. The cover was neither too big nor too small, and it was just right for the scripture. However, it was originally designed to match the scripture, not the one she had seen with the cover of the scripture before. Xiao Wanru was smart. She was afraid that she would come over to look through it today, so she deliberately took a real scripture and put it here. But this showed that she had a guilty conscience. Xiao Wanru's hair was tied up in the simplest way. After Yujie skillfully tied up her hair, she pinned the jade hairpin she had chosen before and fixed her hairstyle. Then she looked at the simple jewelry in the box and said, "Miss, it's rare for you to go out to enjoy the scenery. Do you want to wear earrings? This string of pearls looks beautiful too." As she said, she took out a pair of pearl earrings from the jewelry box and put them in front of Xiao Wanru's ears. Yujie, the fifth miss, is still wearing black clothes. Shuqi couldn't help reminding her. What's wrong with black clothes? These earrings don't look obvious. They are just a pair of ordinary earrings. Besides, they are white, beautiful and inconspicuous. Our miss has been on the mountain for almost 3 years, but she has never worn earrings. Now that she is going to enjoy the scenery, she has to wear them. Yujie shook the earrings in her hand in confusion and handed them to Xiao Wanru. The earrings were indeed the simplest kind. Under the long chain, 3 pearls hung down. They were neither too big nor too small, but they were very glossy. Together with the long chain, they were simple yet elegant, very beautiful and very colorful. Just this pair of earrings was already very eye-catching. Fifth sister, where did you get this pair of earrings? They are so beautiful. Xiao Yanru couldn't help reaching out and saying. Since she had reached out, Yujie had to put the earrings in her hand and watch her take the pair of pearl earrings. I don't know. Maybe they were given by my grandma. Xiao Wanru shook her head. Miss, you are right. These earrings were indeed given to you by Great Elder Princess when you came up the mountain last time. She said that you have been observing mourning for the heir of a duke and infanta for almost 3 years, so you can wear some simple jewelry. This pair was sent to you at that time. Chu Lu introduced with a smile. Xiao Yanru shook the earrings in her hand with appreciation in her eyes and said implicitly, they are so beautiful. These earrings look simple, but they are actually very luxurious. Even if you attend a banquet in the capital city, you can still wear them. If you stand among the misses from aristocratic families, these earrings will really attract people's attention at a glance. Great Elder Princess really dotes on you, fifth sister. Yujie, you'd better not wear these earrings. Xiao Wanru shook her head and said to Yujie, I'm observing mourning now. It's not good for me to wear such conspicuous and luxurious earrings. Well, then I'll wear this pair. Yujie said aggrievedly and reached out to take out another pair of earrings from the box. Compared with the earrings just now, this pair of earrings was really inconspicuous. They were also a pair of pearl earrings, but there was only 1 pearl and 1 earring. If she lowered her head a little, no one would notice that she was still wearing the earrings. Fifth sister, isn't it too simple? You'd better wear this pair. Since it's Great Elder Princess's kind intention, we can't let her pay for it in vain. Xiao Yanru gave the long pearl earrings to Xiao Wanru and persuaded her with a smile. No, thank you, big sister. I'm still in the mourning period, so I should focus on simplicity. If it weren't for today, I wouldn't wear these earrings if I were to accompany everyone to enjoy the scenery. Xiao Wanru casually threw the earrings in her hand into the box in Yujie's hand and refused with a smile. Seeing that Xiao Wanru insisted, Yujie had no choice but to put on the pair of extremely simple and almost invisible earrings for Xiao Wanru. After combing her earrings, they were really inconspicuous. If one didn't look carefully, no one would notice that she was wearing a pair of pearl earrings. Xiao Wanru was extremely satisfied, and of course, so was Xiao Yanru. No one noticed that Xiao Wanru held a hairpin in her hand when she took the earrings just now. At this time, she put it in her sleeve. She didn't know what it would be like to enjoy the scenery outside, so it was better to bring a sharp hairpin just in case. After Xiao Wanru finished packing, the two of them walked out of the courtyard together, leaving Chu Lu and Qing behind and taking Yujie with her. Before leaving, the two of them deliberately put on the same veil. In this way, if the two of them didn't stand together and compare them carefully, no one would be able to tell who was who. When they reached the door, Xiao Yanru suddenly stopped and said to Xiao Wanru modestly, "Fifth sister, wait a moment. I left something behind and will be back soon." "Big sister, help yourself." Xiao Wanru nodded and stepped out of the courtyard with a smile. Yujie followed her closely and waited outside the courtyard with Yujie. Xiao Yanru and Shuqi went back in a hurry and came back soon. The two of them walked forward hand in hand. It was still early, and they didn't meet anyone along the way. However, when they arrived at the maple forest, Xiao Wanru found that there were a lot of people here, and many of them came early. In addition to some women, there were also a lot of men. She looked around and found that this was also the depths of the Yuhui nunnery. In the past, few men entered the depths of the Yuhui nunnery. Was there anything different about this maple forest? "Big sister, why are there so many men here?" Xiao Wanru stopped and asked in astonishment. Chapter 577. It was autumn, and the maple forest was elegant. Chu Qing, Commandery Prince Qing, stood under a maple tree with his hands clasped behind his back, looking at the mountains in the depths of the maple forest. The scenery of the mountains reflected the red leaves. As the wind blew, the leaves rustled. It was a leisurely beautiful scenery. Compared to the flowers in spring, it made people feel more tranquil and comfortable. The aggressive colors made people feel happy at first glance, but the red color of the maple leaves made people feel more at peace. Chu Qing had been standing under the tree for a long time. Looking at the back of the mountain from here, compared with looking over from a small hill inside the high wall in the past, his line of sight was wider, he could see more, and he could think more. The young and handsome noble boy stood quietly under the maple tree. The falling maple leaves were as red as fire and fell on his shoulders from time to time, making people feel that he and the maple forest were like the beautiful scenery in a painting. Many young women who were passing by couldn't help but stop in their tracks and sneak peeks at this handsome young man. One by one, they blushed and left with light footsteps. Not long after, they turned back here. The mountain road was full of twists and turns, but they didn't know that what it turned the most was the human heart. "Your Highness, there are two misses in black clothes and veils coming over." A guard appeared behind him and reported. "Two misses." Chu Qing, who had been calm, was slightly moved. "Yes, it's two misses." Both in black clothes, they entered the maple forest one after the other. The guard nodded. Although the two misses were not far from each other, they didn't go the same way. One entered the maple forest from the left entrance, while the other entered the maple forest from the right entrance. "Where's the hair ornament?" Chu Qing spoke indifferently while his expression remained unchanged. It was as if such an accident was within his expectations. After being raised in the nunnery for so many years, he'd been trained to be calm. No matter how shocked he was in his heart, he was still able to maintain a calm and composed expression. "Both of them are wearing a simple jade hairpin." "I can't see the difference." The guard observed very carefully. After thinking for a while after hearing Chu Qing's question, he said affirmatively. "Are they wearing a veil or a curtain hat?" Chu Qing said with a natural look. He reached out to catch a falling maple leaf, pinched the handle of the maple leaf in his hand, and turned it. "They are both wearing a veil," the guard said. "Which one looks more beautiful?" Chu Qing said casually. "Well, I think it should be the one in front." Although they are both wearing veils, the woman in front has more beautiful eyes. It seems. The guard couldn't think of how to describe it. The two pairs of eyes that were exposed were actually extremely beautiful. It could be seen that both of them were extremely beautiful women. However, The eyes of the woman in front looked very charming at first glance, causing people to feel a sense of amazement at first glance. However, upon closer inspection, one would feel that her eyes were gentle and pure, like the artistic conception of a gurgling stream. It was quick-witted and natural, yet it also moved people's hearts. The eyes of the woman in the back were also extremely beautiful. One could tell that she was a beauty at first glance. She also had very beautiful eyes. Was Chu. She was also had N.A. a choose. However, there, and was, and of the beauty, and of Qing, and the, and woman, and, let's go and meet the lady behind us. Chu Qing smiled. He had made up his mind and said playfully. Everyone knew that the most beautiful woman in the capital city was the first miss of Duke Xing's mansion, so the relatively less beautiful one should be the fifth Mississippi. Thinking that the fifth miss would send a note to them in private, a trace of interest flashed across their eyes. If Rui and great elder princess had not been behind the fifth miss, he would not have come to see her. He had heard that the fifth miss was not a good person. Not only was she capricious, but she also bullied others. She was really not a good person. However, Ruian Great Elder Princess was behind her, so Chu Qing had to pay attention to her. He wanted to see why the fifth miss invited him to the maple leaf forest. It seemed that the 3 years of mourning was just a smokescreen. The fifth miss had been in the Yuhui nunnery for so long, but Chu Qing had never met her. However, although he had never met her, he had someone who had met the fifth Miss Xiao. After hearing all kinds of things about the fifth Miss Xiao, Chu Qing would not have any good impression of the fifth Miss Xiao, not to mention that she was meeting a man in private now. Xiao Wanru and Xiao Yenru did enter the forest one after another, and they also made an appointment to enter from different directions. The reason for this was also Xiao Yenru's idea. At first, the two of them went out together, but after a short walk, Xiao Yenru said that she would enter the maple leaf forest separately with Xiao Wanru. It was said that there were many paths in the maple leaf forest, and she wanted to see how long they would take to meet each other. After that, Xiao Yenru said that she had sprained her ankle and asked Xiao Wanru to go a few steps first. She could walk slowly with Shuqi. Xiao Wanru thought that the two of them would take different paths to the entrance of the forest. Seeing that it was difficult for Xiao Yenru to catch up with her even if she slowed down, Xiao Yenru couldn't keep up with her, so she followed Xiao Yenru's idea and entered a far entrance without waiting for her, leaving the near entrance to Xiao Yenru. Miss, this maple leaf forest is really big and beautiful. When I was in Jiangzhou, there was also a maple leaf forest in the Jingxin Monastery, but it was not as big as this one. How big is the Yuhui nunnery on earth? This forest seems to be very far. Yujie said in surprise as she walked. They saw a lot of people at the intersection, but when they entered the maple leaf forest, they didn't see many people. Maybe it was because of the wide area. Along the way, they only saw a few girls in front of them from a distance, but none of them passed by them. It could be seen that there were many paths in the forest. Xiao Wanru stood still, stretched out her white and tender hand, looked at a red leaf falling on her palm, and said, "If we turn to the exit of Xiao Yenru from here now, it should not be far, right?" They had just come in from the entrance and walked less than 100 meters, so it should not be too far. If they crossed directly, it would be even closer. "Miss, let me take you there." Yujie nodded. She grew up in the mountains, so she had a good knowledge of the direction in the dense forest since she was a child. She was not afraid of getting lost. After looking around for a while and finding the right direction, she led Xiao Wanru to cross. She didn't take Xiao Wanru on a road that was completely level with the intersection just now, but slightly inclined in, so that she could catch up with Xiao Yenru instead of thinking that Xiao Yenru was waiting at the same place as them. Xiao Yenru must be going inside. The maple leaves were very dense. If they didn't make a sound within a few steps, they could hardly see anyone. Without Yujie leading the way, Xiao Wanru felt that she would definitely get lost on this road. The two of them didn't speak and just walked quietly. Occasionally, they could hear others' voices, but they avoided them quietly. "Miss," the first miss is sitting there for a rest. Yuchia, who was walking in front, suddenly stopped and said in a low voice. It was a very obvious path, and there was a pavilion on the side of the path. Xiao Yenru was sitting in the pavilion with Shuqi to rest. They were far away, so they could only see but not hear what Xiao Yenru and Shuqi were talking about. It seemed that Xiao Yenru was not in a hurry. "Miss, is the first miss really injured or not?" Yuchia asked in confusion. Shouldn't she go back if she is injured? Is she going to stay like this? From this point of view, Yuchia felt that the first miss's so-called sprained ankle was actually very unreasonable. "Let's wait and see," Xiao Wanru said with a smile. She put down the leaf in her hand, picked up a redder leaf from the ground, pinched it in her hand, and then squatted down. There happened to be a small stream on her side. The mottled sunlight shone through the tree shadows, making the stream glitter. A maple leaf fell at the bottom of the stream, making the stream ruddy and distinctive. There was a big stone on the side of the stream. Xiao Wanru squatted beside the stone and put the maple leaf in her hand into the water. The water was cool, not only clear, but also very comfortable. The red leaf first floated up and was soaked in water. When it fell on her palm, it was a little smooth, and her soft skin was also dyed red by the light of the red leaf through the stream. Yuchia also squatted beside her. The stone was very good. It not only blocked their figures, but also could be seen clearly when she tilted her head. It was a good place. Seeing Xiao Wanru playing with the water with her hand, Yuchia couldn't help putting her hand into the cool stream, but her attention was still on the pavilion, paying attention to the first Miss Xiao's movements. Xiao Yenru sat in the pavilion and seemed to be unwilling to leave. Shuqi even took out a pot of tea and a cup from the bag she carried with her. She was well prepared. After pouring a cup of tea for Xiao Yenru, she handed the cup to Xiao Yenru. Xiao Yenru took the tea and took a sip unhurriedly, looking unhurried. "Miss, someone is passing by." Suddenly, a tall and straight figure appeared in Yujia's sight and immediately reminded Xiao Wanru. Xiao Wanru put down the water in her hand, looked back in astonishment, and also saw the figure of the man. She blinked her watery eyes, squatted down, turned around, and looked at the man. Was this the man whom Xiao Yenru had invited? Since Xiao Yenru had made an appointment, why did she bring her here? Did she want to cover for herself? With Xiao Yenru's temperament, this explanation didn't make sense at all. Or did she really meet this man by chance and not arranged by Xiao Yenru? Xiao Wanru had just appeared, so she couldn't see clearly what was going on. Xiao Wanru calmly pinched the red leaf in her hand, tilted her head slightly, and focused her attention on Xiao Yenru. There was something fishy going on today, and it must be Xiao Yenru who was behind this. She just didn't know what Xiao Yenru was up to. The man had his back to them, so they couldn't see his face. However, the man bowed to Xiao Yenru in the pavilion, seeming to be very particular about etiquette and didn't go in immediately. Xiao Yenru suddenly stood up, looking very surprised. Obviously, she didn't expect that the man would come to her. Although she couldn't see her expression, she could tell from her expression that something was wrong. Was it really not arranged by Xiao Yenru? Otherwise, how could Xiao Yenru be so calm when there was no one around? Was it an accident? She really didn't believe it. Chapter 578. Chu Qing walked into the pavilion slowly with a servant beside him. When he saw Xiao Yenru sitting there, he asked softly, "Miss, may I have a cup of tea?" He said it very politely. When a gentle and elegant child met an elegant and pretty girl by chance, he behaved in a very decent manner and appearance. Xiao Yenru frowned. She recognized Chu Qing. However, she felt that Chu Qing shouldn't appear in front of her at this time. At this time, Chu Qing should be looking for Xiao Wanru. Could it be that he hadn't found Xiao Wanru yet? "Shuqi, do you have a cup?" Xiao Yenru glanced at Chu Qing calmly and said. She also wanted to ask what this situation meant. Shuqi understood, took out another cup from her bag, poured a cup of tea, and respectfully handed it to Chu Qing. Chu Qing smiled slightly, took it, took 2 sips, and then looked at Xiao Yenru with a smile and said, "Miss, I wonder which mansion you come from. I'm sorry to bother you today. I'll send you a tea set in the future to thank you for the tea you drank today." He meant that he had drunk Xiao Yenru's tea and wanted to thank her. Xiao Yenru stood up, bowed sideways, and said, "Child, you're too polite. It's just a cup of tea. It's nothing. It's just a cup of tea for you, but it's more than a cup of tea for me. Miss, you should give me a chance to thank your mansion." Chu Qing said with an increasingly gentle and elegant smile. Holding the tea in his hand, he didn't sit opposite Xiao Yenru politely. Instead, he stayed far away from her and still stood outside the pavilion, looking both polite and well-behaved. At first glance, people could tell that he was a gentleman who didn't bully others and a talented and good-looking child who was brought up by an aristocratic family. Compared with those foppish playboys who couldn't move at the sight of women, he was much better. But even so, he sounded a little amiable. After looking up at Xiao Yenru, he lowered his head with a slight blush on his face, which made his previous words have a different meaning. But he didn't hate it. No miss from an aristocratic family would hate this kind of extremely implicit and well-behaved behavior. He was so well-behaved that he didn't even step into the pavilion, for fear of ruining the reputation of the miss in the pavilion. He's really good at pretending. Yujia couldn't hear their conversation, but she felt that they were better at pretending than each other, so she couldn't help but say in a low voice. Needless to say, her first miss seemed to be kind, dignified and decent. She was meticulous at all times, but in fact, she was evil and vicious. As long as she had a chance, she would take advantage of her first Mississippi. Now Yujia could see clearly that this first miss might be more evil and vicious than the former first Miss Qin. However, this skin looked much kinder and had a good reputation. It was completely incomparable to the previous young Miss Qin. She didn't say that Xiao Yenru, who was much better than the Miss Qin, so Wanru without saying, she, Xiao Wanru, Qin, and Xiao, Qing, and said, she, who, and said, and it was a pity that both of them were scheming. It was a waste of such a good show under the moonlight. Until now, she still couldn't figure out what was going on. This should be Commandery Prince Qing. Although she was far away from him yesterday, she still saw him. Although she didn't recognize him at once, after thinking for a while, she immediately knew that the person in front of her was the new Commandery Prince Qing, who was not a good person. Xiao Yenru wanted to hook up with Commandery Prince Qing. It was not Xiao Yenru's intention to hook up with Prince Zhou and Prince Yu, but to hook up with this powerless Commandery Prince Qing, who didn't seem to have a good future. Then it was a chance encounter. However, this chance encounter and Xiao Yenru's meticulous dressing made it a little unreasonable. She glanced at Xiao Yenru's black clothes, which were similar to hers, and finally fell on the white jade hairpin on her beautiful hair. It actually looked a little similar to the white jade hairpin on her head. She narrowed her eyes slightly and thought, it seems to be a little interesting. Miss, when did the first miss change her hairpin? Yujia also noticed Xiao Yenru's hairpin at this time and asked in surprise. She should have changed it when she went back with Shuqi just now. Xiao Wanru lifted the corner of her mouth and said with a sarcastic smile. Later, when they went out, Xiao Yenru said that she had sprained her ankle and they went into the forest separately, so she didn't notice that the hairpin on her head had been changed. The first miss is dressed like you today, and even her hairpin is the same as yours. Could it be that she is also making an appointment with this child in your identity? Yujia patted the surface of the stream hard and said angrily. The 2 little fishes swimming happily in the stream were startled and swam away in a panic. Xiao Wanru's heart skipped a beat. Was she pretending that she had the same pulse as Commandery Prince Qing? Pulse? What he meant was that if that was the case, he should go out now and destroy her thoughts. However, she inexplicably felt that it was not so simple. Xiao Yanru was not a shallow person. How could she expose her plan so easily? Let's wait and see. Xiao Wanru smiled slightly and said unhurriedly. She was not in a hurry. She wanted to see it to the end instead of showing up to continue the show. Our miss is the miss of Duke Xing's mansion, and this tea set is not important to her. Child, please don't stand on ceremony. Hearing Chu Qing's words, Shuqi, who was in the pavilion, immediately raised her head and said proudly. The name of Duke Xing's mansion also represented power in the capital city. It turns out that you are the miss of Duke Xing's mansion. I'm sorry for my rudeness. If I have a chance next time, I will definitely thank you, Miss Xiao. Chu Qing put the teacup in his hand the hand of the servant behind him and bowed deeply to Xiao Yanru. Xiao Yanru hurriedly got up to avoid it and then bowed sideways to return the bow. Your Highness, you are. Shuqi said in surprise with her eyes wide open. For a moment, she seemed to be so shocked that she couldn't even speak. As a maid, it was normal for her to make a fuss when she was shocked. However, she immediately came to her senses, restrained herself from losing her composure just now, and bowed deeply to Chu Qing like Xiao Yanru. As the personal maid of a miss from an aristocratic family, her reaction was natural and appropriate. Her master was likable, and her maid was also very polite and intelligent. Miss Xiao, I won't disturb you from enjoying the scenery. I've used this cup, so I won't be impolite and return it to you. I will definitely give you a new one someday. Chu Qing said gently with a smile on his face. After saying that, he swung his wide sleeves, turned around and strode away. Seeing him leave like this, Xiao Yanru's eyes flickered slightly. Until now, she still hadn't figured out why Chu Qing appeared in front of her. Instead of appearing in front of Xiao Wanru, he glanced around and found no trace of Xiao Wanru, so he became more and more confused. However, she didn't show it on her face and suddenly asked, Your Highness, can you ask me if you have seen a girl who looks and dresses like me? As soon as she spoke, she didn't inquire about the identity of this so-called prince, but only cared about another girl. If people knew that she was asking about her fifth sister, they would definitely think that she was really a good elder sister who would care about her younger sister under any circumstances. Oh, I wonder who you are looking for, Miss Xiao. Chu Qing turned around and asked with a smile. She is also my sister. I wonder if you have seen her when you came here. Xiao Yanru asked softly with a slight frown. Her eyes were also very beautiful. Coupled with her beautiful frown, she looked more pitiful. However, even though her face was covered with a veil now, it didn't affect her gentleness. It was hard for a man to resist her, especially when the man had implicitly expressed his affection for her just now. It was a kind of polite affection. I didn't see her. Did she get lost? Do you need my help to find her? Chu Qing showed some concern on his face, and his concern was just right, which could make people feel good about him. Xiao Wanru looked over from a distance and had to sigh with emotion. The couple was really well matched. It seemed that they had some affection for each other. Although they were far away from each other and had two servants by their side, which seemed to be very polite, it inexplicably made people feel that there was affection between them. Thank you, Your Highness. If you see her, please ask her to come here. I'll wait for her here. Xiao Yanru bowed sideways again. Okay. Chu Qing agreed readily. After looking at Xiao Yanru again, he turned around and left with his servant. In the end, he didn't tell her which prince he was. Although there were not many princes in the capital city and they were all members of the royal family, this prince was different from that one. Judging from his age, no one would guess that he was Prince Cheng, and of course, no one would guess that he was the sick Prince Chen. Sometimes it was better to call himself Prince than to directly say his surname. Both Prince Yu and Prince Zhou were much more noble than him now. One of them wanted to say something, while the other pretended to say something. They were a good match. Seeing that Commandery Prince Qing was also coming over, Xiao Wanru pulled Yujie to hide in the shadow of the stone. It seemed that he was coming in her direction. Could it be that he was instigated by Xiao Yanru to come to find her? Although Xiao Wanru felt that it was not easy for this person to be fooled by Xiao Yenru, she didn't want to see him at this time in order to prevent him from taking advantage of the situation. Fortunately, there was a big stone here, which blocked the two of them. Seeing Chu Qing leave from the big stone beside them in a hurry, Xiao Wanru and Yujie poked their heads out and looked at the pavilion in the distance. Shuqi was cleaning up the stone table, and it seemed that she was going to continue to go inside. Xiao Yenru came out of the pavilion smoothly and didn't look like she had difficulty walking with Shuqi's help at all. Sure enough, she just pretended to be in front of her. She played this trick because she wanted to take two paths with her. The scenery was beautiful. It seemed that there were a lot of scenery along the way today. After Chu Qing left, Xiao Wanru and Yujie turned around and walked back to the previous path and continued to walk forward. If they guessed correctly, Commandery Prince Qing was now walking in front of them. Chapter 579. There were tall trees, winding paths, and beautiful maple leaves falling slowly from the trees like flowers. The scenery in front of her was extremely beautiful. Even though Xiao Wanru was full of thoughts, she had to admire that this maple forest was not worse than the garden with thousands of flowers in spring. It was even more amazing in some aspects. The path was winding, and they walked slowly. In the quiet forest, they suddenly heard the noise coming from behind them. Then they saw two old maids appear in front of them. In their sight, one was chasing and the other was running. The one behind seemed to be holding something in her hand and was going to throw it at the old maid in front. The old maid in front was very flexible. She took a turn from time to time instead of running in a straight line. Even if the old maid behind threw something, it was unlikely to hit her. Yujie pulled Xiao Wanru back to the side of the road. The path was not big. It was easy for them to bump into Xiao Wanru when they ran over like this. Looking at the two old maids who bumped into her, Xiao Wanru took Yujie back a few steps and simply stepped out of the path to make way for the two old maids approaching them. She looked coldly at the two old maids approaching them. Yujie stood in front of Xiao Wanru and stared at the two old maids vigilantly. The old maid running in front finally ran to the front of them. She looked back while running, as if she didn't notice that there were people in front of her at all. She also didn't notice that she had run out of the path in a few steps and went straight to Yujie. Yujie staggered a few steps and almost fell down. She had been standing in front of Xiao Wanru and moved aside to make way for Xiao Wanru, who was standing behind her. Seeing the old maid in front of her throw herself at Yujie and take her away, the old maid behind her was overjoyed. She cursed behind Yujie and threw the thing in her hand out. Xiao Wanru had known that something was wrong when Yujie staggered out. She kicked the tree trunk beside her, covered her head with her hands, fell to the side and fell heavily to the ground. The sharp pain under her body made her groan involuntarily, and then she heard a rustling sound. Her leg was hit by something and felt a little hot. Fortunately, it was autumn, and the dress she was wearing was not the kind of thin one in summer. Seeing Xiao Wanru fall to the ground, Yujie kicked the old maid standing in front of her to the ground like crazy. Then she slapped the old maid who was still holding her to the ground and shouted anxiously, "Miss, miss." She turned around and helped Xiao Wanru up, while reaching out to pat off some debris on her body. As soon as she patted it, she cried out in pain. "What is this?" Xiao Wanru stood still with the support of the tree trunk and looked coldly at the two old maids who fell in a mess. There were still some black things on the hem of her black robe, and the ground where she had stood before. Yujie's hand had just patted these things on the black robe for her and was burned. It could be seen that these things were hot. Just now, the old maid had thrown them at her face. The veil on her face couldn't block them at all. There were so many fine things. No matter how many of them hit her face, the place where they hit would inevitably be injured. "Miss, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I'm going to hit this bitch, not to hit you. These are the sand at the bottom of the fried melon seeds. I'm afraid that the fried melon seeds will be damaged," the old maid said as she tried to get up, but found that she couldn't get up for a while. The place where she had been kicked by Yujie just now hurt. She had thought of running away as soon as she got up. Anyway, there was no one here, but now she found that she couldn't run away at all. Miss, it was this old bitch who did it. It has nothing to do with me. I just ran away when I saw that she had such a strong killing intent. I didn't expect that this old bitch would dare to do such a thing. The other old maid shook her hands and hurriedly explained while trying to get up and run away. She was slapped to the ground by Yujie. Her face was in pain, but her legs and feet were fine. She rolled her eyes and wanted to run away. She also made up her mind. There was only a miss and a servant girl here. Although this servant girl seemed to be more powerful, she didn't dare to leave her master here and chase after her. However, as soon as she got up, she sadly found that her clothes were stepped on by a foot. Looking up at Yujie, who was almost crazy with anger, she couldn't help trembling in fear. Needless to say, misses from big families were all delicate and noble, and they were not worse than misses from small families. How could this servant girl be so powerful? Not only did she react quickly, but she also had great strength. Even if they wanted to run away, they couldn't. The old maid pulled hard at the corner of her clothes that was stepped on, but she found that she couldn't pull it at all. This seemingly small servant girl was actually stronger than her, a rough old maid, and she stepped there steadily. Break her feet and see how she can run away. Xiao Wanru said coldly with a trace of malice flashing in her eyes. Yes, miss. Yujie raised her foot and kicked hard at the leg of the old maid who was pulling the corner of her clothes. Ah! The shrill scream spread far away, which scared the other old maid so much that her face turned as pale as the one who was stepped on. Shouldn't she ask clearly at this time? Why did she ask the servant girl to kill her without saying anything? Tell me, what's going on? Xiao Wanru glanced at the two old maids and said coldly. Miss, please spare our lives. Miss, please spare our lives. We really didn't do it on purpose. I borrowed a pot to fry melon seeds in the nunnery, but this bitch came to make trouble and ruined all the melon seeds in my pot. I was so angry that I grabbed a handful of sand with a handkerchief and chased her out. Miss, I really didn't do it on purpose. Please be magnanimous and spare me. The old maid who had smashed the hot sand was the first to react. She moved her body a little, knelt down and kowtowed to Xiao Wanru with tears all over her face. No one knew whether it was because of fear or pain. Miss, please spare our lives. I was just angry that this bitch deliberately hurt my grandson, so I deliberately disturbed her. She chased me, so I ran away. I didn't expect to meet this miss, and I didn't expect that she would grab the hot sand used to fry melon seeds and throw it at me. Miss, I'm really wronged. I don't know anything. The other old maid also reacted at this time. She covered her injured leg, knelt down, and also kowtowed to Xiao Wanru. Miss, please spare our lives. Miss, please spare our lives. The two old maids cried and begged for mercy. They looked extremely pitiful and half knelt down. At first glance, it could be seen that they were in a bad situation. The shrill and miserable scream just now sounded in the quiet forest and alarmed many people who were enjoying the scenery. Those who were far away didn't know the direction, but those who were near could tell that it was in this direction. Someone sped up and came here. Miss? Shuchi also heard it. They were not far away from Xiao Wanru, so such a shrill scream was still very clear. Xiao Yenru listened carefully and showed a trace of complacency on her face. Could it be that Xiao Wanru had fallen into the trap? Otherwise, how could she let out such a miserable scream in pain? Let's go and have a look. She turned around, took Shuchi in another direction, and went across the maple forest. No matter how badly she was injured, it would be good if she could be injured. Even if her injury was not the most serious, there was still the ointment for burns. She had used it before and let Xiao Wanru see that there was no scar on her hand after she recovered. After going back, she would let Xiao Wanru use it. Her face made people angry just by looking at it. It was better to destroy it. Send her to the official office. Ask someone to find out whether someone set up this trap to hurt me. I heard that the officials of the Ministry of Justice are still here. Send her directly to the Ministry of Justice later. Xiao Wanru said coldly. Yujie stepped back to support her. The Ministry of Justice was different from the ordinary yamen. It always made people feel that it was difficult to get out after entering it. If something happened to the people in the capital city, they usually reported it to the capital governor instead of the Ministry of Justice. At least the capital governor was not as strict as the Ministry of Justice. Seeing Xiao Wanru's cold and somewhat hostile eyes, the two old maids really panicked. They could have escaped, but now not only could they not escape, but they would also be sent to the Ministry of Justice. It seemed that this miss was not willing to give up. The two old maids looked at each other and saw real fear in each other's eyes for the first time. Both of them were rough old maids from the countryside, who were hired by someone. They had seen Shuqi before. Shuqi said that Xiao Wanru had been bullying her elder sister, disrespecting her elder sister, and snatching her elder sister's yard. She had hired the two old maids to deal with Xiao Wanru. Of course, she had given them a lot of silver in private. When they were on the mountain, they didn't use them. At that time, they wanted to rush down suddenly when Xiao Wanru climbed up and pushed Xiao Wanru and her servant girl down the mountain by the narrow path. They just needed to report that they slipped and fell down the mountain. This time, they used the hot sand used for stir-frying melon seeds in order to ruin Xiao Wanru's face. The two old maids were uneducated and rough, so they didn't think it was a big deal. Anyway, they would run away after that. There was no one else in the forest, so no one would know who they were. Unexpectedly, Yujie was so fierce that she directly knocked them down to the ground. Then Xiao Wanru gave a cruel order and now asked the Ministry of Justice to charge them with intentional injury. If they were really sent to the Ministry of Justice, it would be difficult for them to get out. In a panic, the two of them knelt down and pleaded with Xiao Wanru, kowtowing as they begged. "Miss, we really didn't do it on purpose. Miss, we won't dare to do it again. Please forgive us, miss." Xiao Wanru looked at the two old maids coldly. Seeing that their foreheads were red and broken, they still didn't let go and didn't say anything. This place was not far from Xiao Yenru's place. Xiao Yenru should be arriving soon. Today, Xiao Yenru had set her up one after another. She would see how she would act next. "Miss, it's not too much to kill them. Since it's a misunderstanding and they are behaving like this, let them go." A gentle voice came, causing Xiao Wanru and Yujie to look up together. Chapter 580. Under the veil, Xiao Wanru showed a slight sneer at the corners of her mouth. Commandery Prince Qing showed up. This should be within Xiao Yenru's expectation. Sure enough, compared with Qin Yuru, Xiao Yenru was the most insidious viper. Unfortunately, Xiao Yenru still didn't understand her character and took it for granted. Not only did Chu Qing appear on the path, there were also other people. Although there weren't many of them, there were only 5 or 6 of them. From the looks of it, they were brothers and sisters of a certain family who had come to enjoy the scenery together. Chu Qing walked in front of the group of people, their voices were not soft, and in this quiet forest, it was easy to hear their words clearly. "Miss, it's very nice to meet you." Chu Qing came over, smiled at Xiao Wanru, bowed politely, and looked at Xiao Wanru's beautiful eyes, which were exposed outside the veil. Even with a little anger and coldness, her eyes were still astonishingly beautiful. Just a glance could make people feel attracted, but no matter how attracted they were just a beauty in Chu Qing's eyes. Although it was difficult to find a beautiful woman in the world, it was not impossible to find one. It was not difficult to find one. When he became powerful, he could have all kinds of beauties he wanted. Even Xiao Yenru, the first beauty in the capital city, didn't matter. In his eyes, beauties were nothing, not to mention this kind of charming beauty. Although men were attracted by her, he preferred elegant ones. Chu Qing felt that although the eyes of the fifth Miss Xiao were a little less beautiful than that of the first Miss Xiao, they were a little more pure and upright, which was exactly the type he liked. Even though all the men in the world thought that the fifth Miss Xiao in front of him was beautiful, none of them liked him. "Child, what can I do for you?" Yu Jie took 2 steps forward and said with a cold look. She looked at Chu Qing with the same vigilance. "Since these 2 old maids were an accident, and you were not hurt, let's forget about it. Look at them, they got their retribution. They should have hurt their legs." Chu Qing said gently. Seeing the 2 old maids kneeling unnaturally and dragging one of their legs, he thought that the 2 old maids had fallen and hurt their legs. His words were very gentle and had the intention to keep the peace. The few people who followed behind him to watch the show nodded their heads in agreement. In the current situation, the 2 old maids were in a sorry state. Not only were they embarrassed, but they also looked pitiful. Compared with Xiao Wanru, who was unscathed, the situation of the 2 old maids was really pitiful. Xiao Wanru pulled Yu Jie, who still wanted to defend herself, raised her eyes to look at Chu Qing and said coldly, "Child, do you mean that only if my face is disfigured by them will I be considered to be in trouble?" In her last life, she had never dealt with Commandery Prince Qing, so she didn't know his character. But now she clearly realized that Commandery Prince Qing's ambition had been taken advantage of by Xiao Yanru. Chu Qing, who had just become Commandery Prince Qing, was in urgent need of a good reputation. Now that there was such an opportunity, he certainly would not let it go. It seemed that he was determined to meddle in this matter. Xiao Wanru's words were extremely sharp, and Chu Qing showed a little embarrassment on his handsome face. But looking at the miserable appearance of the 2 old maids, he still couldn't bear to say, "Since the 2 old maids are in such a state now, miss, you'd better let them go. This is a quiet place of Buddhism, and Buddhism values charity the most. It seems that Miss is also a kind person, so you won't be too aggressive. Even if a person of Buddhism kills someone, shouldn't he be forgiven? Lay down the butcher's knife and become a Buddha immediately, regardless of the fact that he has killed millions of people before." Then why did the Ministry of Justice come to the Yuhui nunnery before? Since killing someone in front of Buddhism is not a big deal and should be forgiven, why did the Ministry of Justice come to the Yuhui nunnery? Xiao Wanru's eyes became colder and colder, and she directly combined it with the fact that the Ministry of Justice came to the Yuhui nunnery to investigate the case. And these things were vaguely related to Chu Qing. "Well, it's different. Miss, you didn't get hurt." Chu Qing was annoyed in his heart, but he couldn't show it on his face. He smiled slightly and looked more and more calm. "If one day you are assassinated but not killed, will you spare them and let the assassins go back?" Xiao Wanru looked at Chu Qing with a faint smile and asked. If she asked someone else this question, others would definitely not think anything of it. No assassin would come to assassinate an ordinary person for no reason, but Chu Qing was not an ordinary person. Since he was ambitious, his future path was destined to be unusual. Or it could be said that since he walked out of the Yuhui nunnery and came to the public, he was destined not to take an ordinary path. It was inevitable that he would be assassinated. If he said that he would not pursue it now, it would be troublesome if his opponent used what he said to deal with him if it really happened in the future. Just as Xiao Yanru was sure that Chu Qing would draw his sword to help when he saw injustice, when he encountered such a thing, Xiao Wanru was also sure that Chu Qing did not dare to say such a thing. Sure enough, Chu Qing coughed in a low voice. When he was about to bypass this sentence and explain from another aspect, he heard Xiao Wanru snatch the words back. "Child, do you also think this kind of thing is unforgivable? Of course, what you encounter is different from what others encounter. Don't do to others what you don't want others to do to you. I hope you don't apply these 2 standards to yourself and others," Xiao Wanru said coldly and rudely. Chu Qing's face turned red with a trace of shame and annoyance. He didn't expect that the first Miss Xiao in front of him was so sharp-tongued. He couldn't help but snort coldly in his heart. She said that she had a good reputation. From what she said, he knew that she was not a good person. Sure enough, rumors could not be trusted. Let's go back and ask the people of the Ministry of Justice to take them away. Xiao Wanru turned to Yujie and seemed to be about to leave. The two old maids were injured. Even if they wanted to escape, they couldn't escape much in a short time. Moreover, they had to return to the maple leaf forest in the end. There was no way down the mountain. The way up the mountain and down the mountain from the Yuhui nunnery was the same. There was only one way in front of the nunnery. Otherwise, Mo Chioi would not have begged Great Elder Princess to take her, good fellow, down the mountain. What's going on? Xiao Yenru, who had been hiding behind the tree for a long time, couldn't hide anymore. Although she couldn't be implicated by these two old maids, it would be disadvantageous to her if Shuchi was involved. It was not the time for her to change her servant girl for the time being. Seeing Xiao Yenru appear behind the tree, Chu Qing inexplicably breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. He couldn't help showing a smile on his face and bowing deeply to Xiao Yenru, who walked over gracefully. Miss Xiao. Several other onlookers looked at Xiao Yenru, who was walking over, and then looked at Xiao Wanru, who was dressed almost the same. They all fell silent. It seemed that the two of them had something to do with each other. They were dressed almost the same. If the miss in front of them hadn't dropped her white jade hairpin on the ground, they would have looked exactly the same. Someone looked at the ground and found that the white jade hairpin on the ground had been broken into two pieces. However, neither the master nor the servant girl seemed to have noticed that the master had stepped on the jade hairpin. In the current situation, naturally, no one would remind Xiao Wanru of such a trivial matter. The jade hairpin was broken. Fortunately, the bun inside was tied tightly, so her beautiful hair didn't fall. Xiao Yenru smiled at Chu Qing and bowed sideways. Compared with Xiao Wanru, who stood there with a bit of arrogance, Xiao Yenru's words and deeds were gentle and dignified, which was very easy to leave a good impression on others. Sister, what's wrong? After bowing, Xiao Yenru turned to the two old maids kneeling on the ground, and then looked at Xiao Wanru with a frown and asked softly. First miss, these two old maids deliberately tried to ruin my miss's appearance by throwing hot sand on her face. If we hadn't dodged in time, our faces would have been ruined. However, these two old maids deliberately said that there was a dispute between them. They quarreled and accidentally hit my miss's face. Look at their positions. How could it be possible for them to hit my miss's face? It's obvious that they did it on purpose. Yujie said confidently and reached out to point at the place where the two old maids were kneeling. The two old maids were kneeling in a row now. Indeed, it didn't seem that they quarreled and hit Xiao Wanru's face by mistake. The onlookers also became confused and thought that Yujie's words were really reasonable. Could it be that the two old maids really had an ulterior motive? Looking at Xiao Wanru's beautiful watery eyes, which were covered by a veil, they all had an idea. Could it be that someone was jealous of her face and did it on purpose? If so, it must be an acquaintance. However, in this place, Xiao Yenru seemed to be the only acquaintance here. Xiao Yenru sensitively found that everyone was looking at her and couldn't help feeling resentful in her heart. She didn't expect that a casual maid of Xiao Wanru could be so eloquent and attract everyone's attention with just a few words. However, she didn't point it out, so she couldn't defend herself even if she wanted to. Fifth sister, since there is such a thing, send them to the capital governor. This kind of thing is in charge of the capital governor. The Ministry of Justice has its own murder cases to deal with. Xiao Yenru said softly. Her words sounded very fair. The two old maids looked at each other, secretly breathed a sigh of relief, and looked at Xiao Yenru gratefully, thinking that this first miss was really kind. Shuchi had repeatedly said that if something really happened to them, she would definitely ask her miss to save them. The people of the Ministry of Justice are close by. Big sister, why do you ask the capital governor to handle it? Is it the most convenient for you to go down the mountain to ask someone and come back? Xiao Wanru asked in confusion. It doesn't matter. I can send someone down the mountain. It's not troublesome. Xiao Yenru said softly, as if Xiao Wanru just said that she directly went to the unreasonable Ministry of Justice because she was afraid of trouble. After all, this kind of thing was a trivial matter. No one was killed or injured, so it was just a suspicion. Big sister, I'm not afraid of trouble. I just think it's better to ask the Ministry of Justice to investigate this kind of thing. If something happens to us on the mountain, the Ministry of Justice has to investigate it even if it doesn't want to. If you think it's unreasonable, you can ask the people of the Ministry of Justice to inquire about it first and see whether we should report it to them or to the capital governor. Let the officials of the Ministry of Justice have the final say, okay? Xiao Wanru said unhurriedly. With Qiu Yu around, anything related to Xiao Yenru was a big deal. This matter had to be left in the Ministry of Justice. Of course, with Qiu Yu around, this matter could be simplified. Xiao Yenru couldn't keep a distance from Qiu Yu even if she wanted to. Chapter 581. What she said was extremely reasonable. Although she was a little aggressive, at least on the surface, she was fair. It was justifiable to let the officials of the Ministry of Justice decide everything. The onlookers also thought it was a good idea. Seeing that Xiao Wanru only had a maid to serve her, it was obvious that they couldn't go to the Ministry of Justice. Someone enthusiastically sent their old maids to go to the Ministry of Justice. Hearing that they were still going to the Ministry of Justice, the two old maids turned pale with fear and involuntarily looked at Shuqi with imploring eyes. Shuqi also panicked. Seeing that the two old maids kept looking at her, she hurriedly glared at them and then nodded her head gently and quietly. She indicated that they didn't have to be afraid and that she could handle everything by herself. Seeing Shuqi nod, the two old maids knew that they had nothing to worry about, so they relaxed and slumped to the ground. The first miss of Duke Xing's mansion. Chu Qing looked at Xiao Yenru and Xiao Wanru thoughtfully. He had heard some other meanings from their conversation just now, and his eyes fell on Xiao Yenru. It turned out that he had made a mistake. The person in front of him was the first Miss Xiao, who was indeed a famous beauty in the capital city. The rumors were right. Yes, you are. Xiao Yenru bowed sideways and said softly. Then she asked for Chu Qing's name for the first time, as if they had never met in private before. I'm Chu Qing. Chu Qing said softly. It turns out that you're Commandery Prince Qing. I'm sorry. Xiao Yenru bowed deeply again. Are you the fifth miss of Duke Xing's mansion? After receiving another bow from Xiao Yenru, Chu Qing turned to Xiao Wanru and asked with a smile, I made a slip of the tongue just now. I'm sorry, fifth miss. Xiao Wanru also bowed sideways, but everyone could tell that the fifth Miss Xiao was still angry with Chu Qing's words just now. Commandery Prince Qing, you're welcome. Xiao Wanru said lightly. Her watery eyes were full of coldness with a bit of charm, which made her eyes look unpredictable. Even this kind of lively charm made people feel distant and cold, but people couldn't help looking at her a few more times inexplicably. Very beautiful, very charming, but also very cold. The onlookers also came to their senses at this time. It turned out that the first Miss Xiao was the first beauty in the capital city, and the other one was the legendary fifth Miss Xiao, who was extremely filial. She voluntarily went up the mountain to observe filial piety as soon as she recognized her ancestors. But why did they feel that there was something wrong now? Was she really the first beauty? Although only her eyes were revealed, it was obvious that the fifth miss was more outstanding. Everyone's gazes wandered between the two of them, and then they fell into deep thought. Is Miss Wu hurt? Chu Qing looked at Xiao Wanru holding Yujie's hand indifferently. Since she stood up, she had been holding Yujie's hand without moving. Fifth sister is really hurt. Is it serious? At this moment, Xiao Yenru seemed to have noticed Xiao Wanru's abnormality. She hurriedly said, walked to the other side of Xiao Wanru and wanted to help her up. However, Xiao Wanru pushed her gently and said, Big sister, I'm fine. I just sprained my ankle slightly. Can you walk? Xiao Yenru said with concern, as if she were really a good sister who sincerely cared about her younger sister. It doesn't matter. It's not a big deal. Big sister, you also sprained your ankle before, but you've recovered now, haven't you? Xiao Wanru said with a smile, and her eyes fell on Xiao Yanru's foot. Xiao Yanru had also said that she sprained her ankle before. I didn't sprain it badly. I've recovered now. Xiao Yanru almost forgot about it. Now that Xiao Wanru reminded her, she hurriedly covered it up and moved her foot gently to show that she was fine. First miss, you're really amazing. You were limping just now, but you've recovered now. Yu Jie praised with an envious look. The onlookers all focused their attention on the first Miss Xiao. On the one hand, it was because of her title as the first beauty. On the other hand, it was because of Yu Jie's words. The sprained ankle seemed to be quite serious. How could she recover in such a short time? When Xiao Yanru walked out just now, they saw clearly that she didn't sprain her ankle at all. Xiao Yanru hated her in her heart, but she couldn't show it on her face. She still smiled with a good temper, looked at a bench not far away, and said, "Fifth sister, let me help you there to have a rest, okay?" "Thank you, big sister." "There's no need. I'll just wait here. After the officials of the Ministry of Justice come and take her away, I'll go back. In the current situation, I can't leave even if I want to." Xiao Wanru said with a wry smile, secretly indicating that she was seriously injured. "I'll ask my servant to keep an eye on you. If you really sprained your ankle, it's not good to stand like this," Chu Qing advised gently. A few more onlookers spoke. Xiao Wanru couldn't refuse their kindness, so she held Yu Jie's hand and slowly walked to the bench on one side. Although she walked very properly, she was still a little stiff and unnatural. It was obvious that she was really injured. The bench was not far away. Shuqi had gone over to wipe the bench with a handkerchief and then helped Yu Jie to help Xiao Wanru sit down. Xiao Yanru followed closely beside her. After Xiao Wanru sat down, she squatted down and seemed to want to see Xiao Wanru's injury, but Xiao Wanru stopped her and said, "Big sister, you can't. There are many people here. It's my fault. I'm too worried." Xiao Yanru stood up and stood beside Xiao Wanru with concern and gentleness in her eyes. When Chu Qing saw her expression, he increasingly felt that the first Miss Xiao, as her name suggested, was extremely beautiful. He rolled his eyes and came up with an idea. No matter whether it was Xiao Wanru who had written the paper asking him to come here or not, he could ignore it for the time being. He could bring it up when it was necessary. The two misses of Duke Xing's mansion, both the first miss and the fifth miss, were good. One of them had Duke Xing's mansion behind her, while the other had Rui and Great Elder Princess behind her. Both of them were what he needed. If he could have both of them speak up for him or have a relationship with them, it would be a rare good thing for his great cause. After making up his mind, he left the servant to look after the two old maids beside him and walked towards them, intending to make a good impression on them. Seeing Chu Qing coming over, Xiao Wanru leaned her head against Yu Jie, who was standing aside, and closed her eyes. It seemed that she was in so much pain that she didn't want to speak. In her current situation, it was normal for her to have no strength to speak. In such a cool weather, her white and tender forehead had been covered with sweat after just a few steps. It could be seen that her injury was really painful. Seeing Xiao Wanru lean her head against Yu Jie and close her eyes, Chu Qing turned to Xiao Yanru and said, "First miss, I've brought an imperial physician here. Do you want to ask the imperial physician to have a look at the fifth miss injury?" "I don't dare to trouble you, Commandery Prince Qing. Fifth sister and I have the ointment given by the imperial palace. It won't get in the way." Xiao Yanru refused softly and secretly cursed Commandery Prince Qing for being so ignorant. Who would want his imperial physician? In this case, her ointment would be useless. "Well, if you need anything, just tell me. I'll stay in the Yuhui nunnery these days." Chu Qing also knew that he couldn't force them at this time, so he just expressed his sincerity. "Thank you, Commandery Prince Qing. I heard that you've been cured. Why do you still stay in the Yuhui nunnery?" Xiao Yanru didn't want him to talk about Xiao Wanru's injury again, so she immediately changed the topic in a soft voice. "My mother has not recovered from her injury. She needs to rest for a few days before she goes down the mountain. Chu Qing said with a vague smile. He was unwilling to talk about this topic. Why is the first miss also on the mountain? I heard that only the fifth Miss Xiao is on the mountain. Xiao Yanru liked to talk about this topic, because it could set off her virtuous reputation. It's too lonely for my fifth sister to observe mourning alone on the mountain. I told my grandma that I'm willing to accompany her to observe mourning for eldest aunt and eldest uncle. The first miss is so kind. Chu Qing praised. I don't deserve your praise, Your Highness. This is what I should do. Xiao Yanru said a little shyly, Your Highness is kind. We have encountered such a big trouble, so we have to trouble you to explain it to us later. Xiao Yanru calmly dragged Chu Qing into the trouble. She really didn't want to get too involved with Qiu Yu. Qiu Yu was also a descendant of an aristocratic family, and they had interacted in the circle in the past. Xiao Yanru didn't want to hear the rumor that she was close to Qiu Yu. She was going to enter the imperial palace, so how could such a rumor spread? It would be better if she could ask Chu Qing to help her. It's not a big deal for me to serve you. Chu Qing happened to be looking for an opportunity to get close to them, so he certainly wouldn't refuse and nodded with a smile. One of them was willing to fight, while the other was willing to suffer. With a sense of closeness, they naturally became more and more affectionate and happy as they talked. They even forgot Xiao Wanru, who was leaning in Yujia's arms, and laughed softly from time to time. One was a handsome man, and the other was a miss, who was obviously a beauty even if she only showed her eyes. Standing together, they were very eye-catching. Xiao Wanru, Yujia, and Xiao Yanru's maid Shuqi, of course, became the background. No one would pay attention to these people who didn't move at all, as if they didn't exist at all. Although the bystanders were afraid of the two people's identities and did not come close, they were all looking at the two of them. No matter how they looked at it, they felt that although it was the first time they met, they had already taken a liking to each other. As they talked and laughed, they seemed to have forgotten the injured fifth Mississippi. The fifth miss was really pitiful. It was obvious that the first miss didn't take her seriously. Otherwise, how could she still laugh at this time? The maple leaves fell one by one on the two of them, which added a bit of beauty to the ground. They were more delicate than flowers, beautiful and elegant, as if they were a match made in heaven. One of them raised her head slightly, while the other lowered her head slightly. From time to time, they would smile sweetly, which was very pleasing to the eye. But when Qiu Yu saw this scene, he was full of jealousy and even felt that his eyes hurt. He strode over the servant who was explaining to him, walked to the two people in a few steps, cupped his hands to Chu Qing, and said, Greetings, Commandery Prince Qing. Chapter 582. Greetings. Qiu Yu turned to Xiao Yanru without waiting for Chu Qing to return the salute. Seeing Xiao Yanru's eyes under the veil, he was stunned for a moment and felt that he might have mistaken her for someone else. He took a deep breath and said hesitantly, Greetings, First Miss Xiao. Xiao Yanru didn't know that Qiu Yu would mistake her for Xiao Wanru, who was wearing a veil. She immediately smiled, bowed sideways and said, Your Excellency. Hearing Qiu Yu's voice, Xiao Wanru slowly opened her eyes and met Qiu Yu's extremely surprised eyes. She said in a low voice, Your Excellency, I'm sorry that I can't greet you because of my injury. It doesn't matter. Qiu Yu stammered. He looked at Xiao Wanru and then at Xiao Yanru and was at a loss. Did he really make a mistake? He looked at Xiao Yanru and then at Xiao Wanru, and finally fixed his eyes on Xiao Yanru. He first heard of the first Miss Xiao's beauty and then fell in love with her. How could he fall in love with her just because he had mistaken her for someone else? The first Miss Xiao was his favorite. Of course, Commandery Prince Qing in front of him was really unpleasant to the eye. It seemed that he was also fawning over the first Miss Xiao, which was really annoying. Hearing that something happened to Xiao Yanru, Qiu Yu put down his work and rushed over with his subordinates. At this moment, his two subordinates had figured out the cause of the matter and came to report to Qiu Yu. After Qiu Yu's two subordinates finished reporting, Xiao Wanru said, "Your Excellency, can the Ministry of Justice handle this matter?" In front of the beauty he liked, Qiu Yu certainly wouldn't say that it was a small matter and the Ministry of Justice wouldn't handle it. Qiu Yu straightened his back, looked at Xiao Yenru, and said with a serious face, "Of course, the Ministry of Justice will handle this matter. First Miss, Fifth Miss, don't worry. I will interrogate these two old maids and find out who is behind them. I will never make you feel wronged." Yu Jie secretly curled her lips. She didn't see the first miss feeling wronged. Of course, now that the two old maids had been sent to the Ministry of Justice, the first miss seemed to feel wronged. "Thank you, Your Excellency," Xiao Wanru said softly. "Thank you, Your Excellency." Xiao Yenru bowed to him with a smile. Qiu Yu waved his hand and asked his two subordinates to take the two old maids back for the record. He would check it when he came back. He didn't want to go back in such a hurry. He had tried to get close to Xiao Yenru, but Xiao Yenru seldom came out like Xiao Wanru. Now that he had such a good opportunity, of course, he would not let it go. Did First Miss come out to admire the scenery? I happen to be free now. Why don't I accompany First Miss and Commandery Prince Qing? Qiu Yu said with a smile. No matter how unwilling he was, he had to mention Chu Qing. Otherwise, the first Miss Xiao, who had always been polite, would definitely not enjoy the scenery with him. Chu Qing was naturally happy that Qiu Yu invited him. Right now, he didn't have anyone close to him in the imperial court. He also knew that it was not easy for him to win over his subordinates. However, no matter how difficult it was, he would not give up. Qiu Yu was from the Ministry of Justice and had a good family background. It was a pleasant surprise that he could start with Qiu Yu. He immediately agreed with a smile. Of course, he could tell that Qiu Yu seemed to be interested in Xiao Yenru, so there was no need for him to compete with him. He was really not in a hurry to get a beauty. I can't do that. Fifth sister is injured. I can't leave. Xiao Yenru said with concern and fixed her eyes on Xiao Wanru again. She had hugged Chu Qing just now in order to save Chu Qing's face. It was really hard to tell what would happen in the future. If she could save Chu Qing's face, even if there was an accident in the future, she could keep it in her hands. However, she was unwilling to enjoy the scenery with Qiu Yu and Chu Qing at this time. Although they were not a man and a woman in private, neither of them was a good partner in her heart. She didn't want to spread rumors about them. Big sister, go ahead. I feel much better after sitting for a while. I'm not in a hurry to go back now, so I can sit here for a while. Big sister, you can come here to see me after you come back. Just as she was about to refuse, Xiao Wanru raised her eyes and said. The fifth Miss's foot is a little injured. Let the fifth Miss sit here for a while. First Miss, you can take a look at the scenery for the fifth Miss and tell her about it when you come back. It's rare to have such an opportunity. If you refuse me and Commandery Prince Qing and I will be sad. I'm going to try the case later. It's not easy for me to enjoy the scenery. Qiu Yu said with a smile. Xiao Wanru's words helped him out of trouble. He immediately pretended to be joking and invited her again implicitly. Ah. Xiao Yenru hesitated. Although she didn't like Qiu Yu, she might have to ask Qiu Yu for help later. In addition, she still wanted to save a little friendship with Chu Qing. If she refused at this time, it would be very embarrassing for him. Moreover, Xiao Wanru said that she was fine and didn't want to go back. She just wanted to sit here. If she insisted on sitting here with them, although it was reasonable, it would make Qiu Yu and Chu Qing a little embarrassed. First Miss, please. Chu Qing helped Qiu Yu calmly, took a step back with a smile, slightly cupped his hands and said. Since he had said that, Xiao Yenru couldn't refuse him even if she wanted to. She comforted Xiao Wanru a few more words at once and asked about Xiao Wanru's injury with concern. After that, she left reluctantly. At first, after taking a few steps, she deliberately turned around. She really looked like a good elder sister. Seeing that they had all left, the onlookers also left, leaving Xiao Wanru sitting there alone. They couldn't keep watching her so rudely, so they followed the three people in front of them and slowly walked in along the path to enjoy the scenery. "Miss, how are you?" After everyone left, Yujie said anxiously and squatted down to take off Xiao Wanru's shoes. Seeing Xiao Wanru's sprained ankle, her face immediately changed. Xiao Wanru's ankle had swollen. "Call me Qing, Xiao Wanru's forehead was immediately covered with sweat after being touched by Yujie. Where is she?" Yujie stammered with a pale face. "Qing, come out." Xiao Wanru gasped and said in a low voice. Yujie looked around blankly and immediately saw Qing, walking out quickly from behind a tree. She was overjoyed and said with tears in her eyes, "Qing, come here and have a look at Mrs. Foot." Of course, she knew that Qing, was capable and not an inferior maid at all. She was sent by Prince Chen to protect her Mississippi. In fact, Qing had followed Xiao Wanru all the way down, but Xiao Wanru had not allowed her to come out before. Now that Qing, was gone, it was her turn to come out. She walked up to Xiao Wanru, knelt down on one knee, put Xiao Wanru's injured foot on her knee, looked at Xiao Wanru's swollen ankle, and said, "Miss, please bear with it." "Okay." Xiao Wanru gritted her teeth, held Yujie's hand tightly, and looked straight into the distance. She felt a sharp pain in her feet. It was so painful that even though she was prepared, she still couldn't help but groan. Her clothes were soaked in sweat. Fortunately, it was only for a moment, and the sharp pain in her feet was gone. She couldn't even touch it. "Miss, it's okay. I'll apply some ointment for you first. You will be fine after resting for a few days. It will take a few days for the swelling to subside." Qing, took out a bottle of ointment from her bosom and carefully applied it to Xiao Wanru's ankle. Immediately, the cool feeling diluted the previous burning pain. The ointment Qing, brought was given by Chu Luchen, so it was naturally very effective. After applying the ointment, Qing, was about to tear the cloth on her petticoat, but was stopped by Xiao Wanru. Looking at Yujie standing beside her, Xiao Wanru pointed at her and said, "Tear Yujie's skirt." She only took Yujie with her when she went out, so she could only use Yujie's cloth to bandage Qing's wound. She didn't want others to find out about Qing's injury prematurely. Both Qing and Yujie understood. Yujie picked up her outer robe, and Qing grabbed the corner of her inner robe and tore it hard. A piece of cloth was torn off, and Qing carefully wrapped it around Xiao Wanru's ankle before putting down Xiao Wanru's foot. "Go to Huiding Nun, who works for Mingqiu Nun, and ask her to take a look at me. It's better to ask another nun to come here." Xiao Wanru stretched her foot and felt that although her foot was still a little soft and painful, it was basically fine. So she immediately gave an order. Although others didn't know the relationship between Mingqiu Nun and her, the fact that Mingqiu Nun came from Jiangzhou and she also came from Jiangzhou could make others have some guesses. Qing nodded, and then her figure flashed and vanished from their fields of vision. Xiao Wanru sat for a while and felt that her foot was fine. So she stood up with the help of Yujie and walked inside slowly. Since there was such a beautiful scenery, she might as well enjoy it. Not only could she enjoy the beautiful scenery, but she could also make Xiao Yenru suspect that she deliberately pretended to hurt her leg. Why not? Xiao Yenru's actions today could be said to be one trap after another. At the beginning, when she met Chu Qing, it seemed that Chu Qing had made a mistake. Could it be that Chu Qing wanted to meet her at that time? But she obviously had no contact with Chu Qing at all. These were the things she couldn't figure out. As for the matter about the two old maids, Qing had noticed that Shuqi had secretly contacted the two old maids. The two old maids moved in as ordinary pilgrims at the foot of the mountain. They didn't look like servants in the mansion, but like real villagers. At a glance, it could be seen that they had never been disciplined in their behavior. It was impossible for Xiao Yenru to get in touch with such people. Who found them for her? With Xiao Yenru's character, it was impossible for her to directly ask the servants in the mansion to find them, because it was easy to expose herself. Before doing anything, Xiao Yanru would carefully consider the result after she failed. Such people were the most difficult to deal with. She raised the corner of her mouth silently. She would force Xiao Yanru into a panic step by step. If she kept acting like this, even if she foiled her plot, she couldn't find out who she was. As for the two of them wearing the same clothes today, was it because Xiao Yanru wanted to force her to wear the same clothes and was afraid that she would change them? Was it because she wanted to frame her? If that was the case, did it mean that it was not a surprise to meet Chu Qing here today? Thinking of Chu Qing's gentleness and elegance and politeness before, could it be that he wanted to push this person in front of him? She didn't think it through, and the more she thought about it, the more suspicious she felt. She stopped and suddenly said, "Yujie, my hairpin was broken just now. Go and see if it's still there." "Yes, I'll go and find it right away." Yujie looked at Xiao Wanru's beautiful hair and found that the hairpin was indeed missing. She immediately turned back to the place where the accident happened. As expected, she found the broken hairpin on the ground and came back with a sad face. The hairpin looked simple, but it was very valuable. "Miss, it's okay. Put it away. I have another one here." Xiao Wanru took out a hairpin from her sleeve, handed it to Yujie, and motioned for her to pin it on her head. Yujie took the hairpin and looked at it. She was stunned. Chapter 583. "Miss, this hairpin is not suitable, is it?" As Xiao Wanru's personal maid, she naturally knew Xiao Wanru's accessories very well. This hairpin was not given to her by others, but made by Xiao Wanru herself. It was made of bamboo, not ordinary bamboo, but the purple bamboo in Huaguang Temple. She got this purple bamboo from Prince Chen. Not everyone could get the purple bamboo in Huaguang Temple. When she took it back, Xiao Wanru cut a sharp hairpin herself, but later this hairpin was taken away by Prince Chen. When it appeared again, the originally coarse hairpin had been carved with an orchid, a purple orchid. With the original color of the purple bamboo, she trimmed the hairpin and made it look extremely beautiful. Xiao Wanru used to put this hairpin in a secret compartment at the corner of the jewelry box. When Yujie took it out before, Xiao Yanru didn't see it, because there was only one hairpin in this secret compartment. If she didn't take it out, no one would notice it. "This one?" Xiao Wanru insisted. "Yes." Seeing that Miss was so insistent, Yujie could only agree. She carefully inserted the hairpin into her hair and pinned it firmly. Just now, although her hair was still in a bun, it was a little loose. If she didn't pin the hairpin early, it would definitely be loose later. If someone saw it, it would be impolite. There was a light purple hairpin in her black hair. The slightly raised hair looked like an orchid. Upon a closer look, it was indeed an orchid, which was very unique and beautiful. It immediately made her plain black clothes look very vivid. Only this hairpin had some color on her clothes. However, this kind of natural purple color had its own kind of light elegance. Even though this color was a little out of place in Xiao Wanru's black clothes, it had its own kind of beauty. "Let's go." Xiao Wanru looked at the road ahead and walked forward slowly. Yujie followed closely. This time, Xiao Wanru really focused on enjoying the scenery. Her feet were still swollen, so it was not convenient for her to walk, so she simply held Yujie's arm and walked while enjoying the scenery. From time to time, she stopped to pick up a few beautiful red leaves and asked Yujie to keep them. Most of the maple leaves falling from the trees were broken and uneven in red. Few of them were intact and colorful. Xiao Wanru walked and stopped from time to time, but only picked a dozen leaves that she liked. "Fifth sister, is your foot better?" When Xiao Wanru squatted down to pick up the red leaves on the ground and looked at them carefully, she suddenly heard Xiao Yanru's gentle and surprised voice. Xiao Wanru looked up and saw Xiao Yanru, Qiu Yu, and Chu Qing coming back together in front of her. She didn't get up but just waved the red leaf in her hand. "Big sister, I'm choosing a good maple leaf." "Fifth sister, why do you want a good maple tree? Xiao Yanru came over and asked in surprise. If you like these, you can pick them back and put them in the book. Xiao Wanru lowered her head again and gestured at the 2 maple leaves in her hand. Both of them were still intact. Fifth sister, get up quickly. Is your foot better? Doesn't it hurt to squat like this? Xiao Yanru said with concern and was about to pull Xiao Wanru up. First miss, don't pull my master. My master's foot hurts and she can't get up for a while. Yujie stood up, stopped Xiao Yanru's hand, and said. Her hand happened to block Xiao Yanru's hand. Then let her get up. How can she squat like this? She has been injured and can't move. She sweated profusely in pain when she walked a few steps before. Xiao Yanru looked increasingly concerned, but she didn't reach out her hand again. Instead, she tried to persuade her. She sweated profusely in pain when she walked a few steps before. Now she must have walked a lot. Chu Qing looked at Xiao Wanru and found that she looked calm and there was no sweat on her white and tender forehead. There was a trace of doubt in his eyes. Could it be that the 5th Miss Xiao pretended to be injured before? Qiu Yu's eyes also fell on Xiao Wanru's face. He couldn't see her face under the veil, but she didn't seem to be in so much pain under the veil. Did she pretend to be injured? Xiao Wanru stood up with the help of Yujie. Perhaps because she had squatted for a long time, she staggered slightly. Fortunately, Yujie had prepared for it. She grabbed Xiao Wanru with force and didn't let go until Xiao Wanru steadied herself. I'm better. Thank you for your concern, big sister. Xiao Wanru said softly. She looked at the 3 people who came together and seemed to be in a good mood and said, Big sister, have you finished your stroll? How is the scenery in front? If my foot is not injured, I can go to the front with you and have a look. As she said, there was a trace of disappointment in her eyes. Xiao Yanru glanced at Shuqi, and Shuqi immediately stepped forward, approached Xiao Wanru intimately, and said with a smile, 5th Miss, you can also finish your stroll. Try to move your foot. You have walked such a long way just now. Maybe you can do it if you move your foot. It seemed that she was encouraging Xiao Wanru, but if one thought about it carefully, they would find that Xiao Wanru was pretending. Indeed, when she was injured, she couldn't even move a single step. However, everyone saw how she forced herself to stand. After that, her forehead was in so much pain that she was sweating. But now, she seemed to be fine. Not only was she fine when squatting on the ground, she was even able to stand up easily. Was this real or fake? Chu Qing looked at the place where they were now and estimated that they had walked a long way. It seemed that the 5th Miss Xiao should have come here soon after they left. There was a trace of thoughtfulness in his eyes. Qiu Yu was not as reserved as Chu Qing. He looked Xiao Wanru up and down a few times and couldn't help saying at this time, 5th Miss Xiao, are you hurt? His words were extremely unpleasant to hear. He meant that Xiao Wanru had pretended to be injured before. As a miss from an aristocratic family who pretended to be injured in front of a man, it was really an eyesore and even made people doubt her purpose and character. In fact, Xiao Yanru didn't think in that direction. After all, she had seen Xiao Wanru's injured look and the way she sweated profusely in pain and couldn't even speak. How could she pretend to be like that? But now, she felt that Xiao Wanru was really good at pretending. It was obvious that she had been deceived by Xiao Wanru at that time. She didn't expect that she would be deceived one day. Xiao Yanru sneered in her heart. In this case, it was a good opportunity. She simply peeled off Xiao Wanru's skin and let Qiu Yu and Chu Qing see clearly how pretentious Xiao Wanru was. She was the most noble miss of Duke Xing's mansion, the most elegant and dignified, so she naturally had to be accompanied by others. Xiao Wanru came to her door to be a foil, so how could she not accept it? She had wanted to step on Xiao Wanru. Since Xiao Wanru asked for it, she couldn't blame herself now. She could only blame herself for being too stupid and thinking that she was infallible to play tricks. Your Excellency, what do you mean? Our 5th miss was naturally injured. Could it be that she pretended to be injured before? Yu Jie said to Qiu Yu rudely with a cold face. Your Excellency, my fifth sister has always been honest. How could she do such a thing? Your Excellency, you have crossed the line. Xiao Yanru's face darkened and she said after Yu Jie. Qiu Yu's face flushed and then turned purple. He felt extremely ashamed to be rebuked by his beloved for other people's affairs in front of Commandery Prince Qing. On the way there, he also saw that Commandery Prince Qing seemed to have a faint affection for the first Miss Xiao, which reminded him of the scene he had seen on his way here just now. The combination of a handsome man and a beautiful woman was very pleasing to the eye, but he didn't like it. Now he was rebuked by Xiao Yanru in front of Chu Qing. Even though she didn't mean it, Qiu Yu still felt extremely ashamed. He couldn't lose face in front of Chu Qing. Fifth Miss, I have to investigate the case just now. Whether the fifth Miss Xiao is injured or not is related to the handling of this matter. Fifth Miss Xiao, you'd better let me check whether she is injured or not. Qiu Yu coughed hard and said coldly in a businesslike manner. He said these words extremely harshly and looked at Xiao Wanru coldly, as if he would believe that Xiao Wanru deliberately schemed against others if Xiao Wanru disagreed. Xiao Yanru was very satisfied with his behavior. On the way there, she could certainly sense the uneasiness between Qiu Yu and Chu Qing. Now seeing that Qiu Yu was aroused by her, she was secretly complacent. Your Excellency, my fifth sister is a young lady. How can you check her injury in public? Xiao Yanru retorted and stood in front of Xiao Wanru, as if she didn't want Xiao Wanru to be bullied. First Miss, rest assured. Commandery Prince Qing and I will step back and let you check her injury. I believe that you will be an honest young lady and will never bring shame to Duke Xing's mansion. Qiu Yu looked at Xiao Yanru seriously and said. Of course, he wouldn't let Xiao Yanru think that he was a lecher, so he looked at Chu Qing after saying that. Chu Qing naturally nodded. Fifth sister. Xiao Yanru looked at Xiao Wanru in embarrassment. Xiao Wanru was about to cry because of Qiu Yu's stupidity. He had unconsciously fallen into Xiao Yanru's trap and thought that Xiao Yanru was a good young lady, while Xiao Wanru was the one who would bring shame to Duke Xing's mansion. She raised the corners of her mouth silently, looked at Xiao Yanru with her watery eyes, and said, Big sister, do you want me to take off my shoes and check them to prove that you are a good young lady, while I will bring shame to Duke Xing's mansion? Since everyone present was unkind to her, Xiao Wanru didn't stand on ceremony anymore. First Miss, you just listened to what Lord Qiu said, but you don't believe a word of what my miss said. Who is trustworthy, Lord Qiu or my miss? Could it be that an eldest Miss Hart, our young miss, is such an untrustworthy person? Yu Jie stood in front of Xiao Wanru with an angry look, glared at Xiao Yanru, who was pretending to be sympathetic, and said. Her words were so harsh that Xiao Yanru almost couldn't help but reach out to slap Yu Jie. How dare this servant girl say such words? Who gave her the courage to say that in front of her? How dare you? As a servant girl, you should say that. Shuqi rebuked loudly, took 2 steps forward, and reached out to slap Yu Jie. She was Xiao Yanru's principal servant girl and had always been respected by the servants in Duke Xing's mansion. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.